Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 22nd of December, with me, Ellie Costello, and the legendary Anne Diamond.
She said she wouldn't say that. These are today's top stories.
The Czech Republic will hold a day of mourning after 14 people were killed and 25 people were injured in a mass shooting at the university in Prague. It's the worst fatal shooting since Czech independence 30 years ago, but it's not being treated as a terrorist incident.
The nightmare before Christmas. The UK is braced for the annual travel chaos, but it's set to be even worse in the aftermath of Storm Pia. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson is at Birmingham's New Street Station with the latest.
Yeah, well, as Storm Pia continues to batter part of the UK, millions are set to hit the railways and the roads as well. I'll have the latest on people trying to get home for Christmas here from Birmingham.
The government rose back on their legal migration plan. The earnings threshold to bring foreign family members to the UK will be £29,000 and not the £38,700 previously announced by the Home Office.
Sir Keir Starmer has not ruled out launching nuclear weapons to protect the UK if he becomes Prime Minister. Speaking exclusively to GB News, the Labour leader said he was keen to increase defence spending.
That the first duty of government is the protection of the country, and so we're very, very clear about that in terms of the resource that must go with that commitment. But there is a NATO commitment here which we will always make sure that we maintain.
And are we getting another European Super League? It's the question on everyone's lips, and Paul Coit is here with the latest.
I have the latest, but I don't have the answers.
Oh.
I don't think it's going to happen, I'll be honest with you. New court ruling says that the European Super League rears its ugly head again, but I don't think there's going to be any English teams involved. And also, 16-year-old Luke Littler in the World Darts Championship has won again.
He's very good, isn't he?
Annie Shuttleworth will be here with the all-important weather.
Good morning. With just 3 days till Christmas, I'm sure you're interested in what the weather's doing. Well, you can find out all the details with me a little bit later on.
And please do join the GB News breakfast conversation. We do love to hear from you, don't we?
Absolutely. Of course, you make our programme, actually, don't you?
Yeah, they absolutely do.
The news is the news, but you are GB News.
Yeah, and you make it fun as well. gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GB News.
I think it's sort of Christmas weekend, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like that, doesn't it?
We look like a hollyberry.
Yes, the holly and the ivy.
My mum always used to dress me, and my favourite outfit for Christmas was it was a little green corduroy skirt. God, those were the 60s, and a red jumper. And she always said you look like a hollyberry, and I think we do today. And it was quite by accident.
And the best part is, yeah, it wasn't intentional.
No, that's
right.
We're
just
absolutely
in sync with each other.
Well,
very festive.
Thinking the same thing. I mean, like I was saying, the news is the news, and it's not good news. But your thoughts on Christmas, maybe your pictures as well. I finally got the tree up and the decorations up and the tartan sort of swathes on the curtains. But there's boxes all over the place, and I suddenly realised I've got underfloor heating, and
that's very nice.
But there are chocolatey things in the presents to go under the tree. So at the moment, I can't put them on the floor.
They might need to go on a shelf.
So at the moment, they're all on the sofa.
Yeah.
But at some point, I'm going to have to put them under the tree.
Monday morning, maybe just...
I think so, yeah, exactly. Overnight, we'll leave them out for Father Christmas. Anyway, do stay in touch with us, won't you? And cheer us up with your pictures, please. You know how to do it. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Yes, because we certainly need it, don't we?
We do, don't we, at the moment? And now the Czech Republic has declared Saturday a national day of mourning after that gunman killed 14 people and injured about 25 at the university in Prague.
Yes, the Czech Interior Minister said there was no indication the killings had any connection with international terrorism and that the police are still working to find a motive.
Yet they're also working on the theory that the gunman was also responsible for the deaths of 2 people in a forest.
Well, this comes as a large number of weapons were found at the university building, where we understand that the gunman was himself a student there too. He also died, but it's not clear whether he shot himself or whether he was shot dead by officers.
Well, joining us to discuss this is former British Army spokesperson, Major Michael Shearer. A very good morning to you. It's just the most terrible incident. We're left with many more questions than answers at this stage, aren't we?
Yes, you're right. Good morning. The first thing, obviously, is condolences to all those involved, and indeed the people of the Czech Republic, who are very sensible and imbued with a real, common sense, really, on their day-to-day living. How such a thing could happen in their capital city is incredible. And I guess the first question that I would ask is, how were those weapons there? These are assault weapons.
When police turn up to an incident like that, ordinary police would only be wearing sidearms, wouldn't they? And are they any good up against what was an incredibly, what do you call it, a long-barreled rifle?
Well, it will be some defence, but I think the bigger issue here, and we're going to have to involve, I'm afraid, the EU in this, is the Schengen Agreement and how freely weapons and other non-lawful items can travel between borders. And I think the EU now have to take a real good look at the Schengen Agreement to see whether they should tighten up their borders so that the trafficking of weapons like this can be halted.
What do you think about the police response to this? Because they have been praised for evacuating that building very quickly. They say that if police hadn't have acted so quickly and eliminated the shooter, whatever that may mean, then many more people would have died. But we're also hearing reports that the shooter's father was found dead several hours before this mass shooting happened. Do you think it was a quick enough response, or do you think there were hours there where something could have happened?
I mean, they're all imponderables, really. I mean, it's too much of a coincidence, I would say, that the father is found dead in the morning and then this atrocity happened later on in the day. But I think the initial response of the police was outstanding. They really did move quickly. They contained the area. They texted and used many other means of communication to tell the school and the individuals in it to contain themselves where they were, lock the doors, put items up against the door, and ultimately many, many more people could have been involved, tragically lost their lives had the police not moved so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds as though the students did the right thing, and it's terribly sad that students are told nowadays what to do in case there's a shooter on the rampage. But the shots that we've seen of those students that clambered out onto a tiny ledge right high up in the building, just as the only way they could think of to get out of his sights, we're seeing it now. I mean, that's terrifying that they were driven to that. We don't know how they are, but one can only pray that they did manage to escape.
Yeah, I mean, it is a real shocker watching these images. It is. I was speaking to a friend last night that lives in Prague, an old army chum of mine, and he was telling me that the gun laws in the Czech Republic are actually quite laxed. Not that they were being in any way laissez-faire about them. They just didn't need to have any tighter laws, but clearly now they do. There is a thriving industry, I'm told, where tourists come in with the view to firing assault rifles on ranges in the Czech Republic that they would not otherwise be able to do. I think that the Czech government will get across this. I'm quite sure, quite sure.
Can you put the genie back in the bottle? If they've got if they've got a state now, which, I mean, they're so used to being a very civilised state, aren't they?
Yes, indeed.
In the Czech Republic, and we've always looked upon them as being so. But if they do have lax gun laws, can you ever then pull back?
Well, I think you can. You have amnesty. You offer people the opportunity to give in their weapons. And then, of course, if you're restricting them coming into the country in the first instance, there will be natural decline in those that exist. You won't, of course, get rid of them all overnight, but there are measures that you can put in place to reduce them and therefore reduce the risk.
There are early reports here that the shooter was inspired by a similar attack that happened in Russia some time ago, where a classmate went in and shot several of her other classmates. With social media and the dark web, how can we avoid these sort of copycat attacks that we've seen now in the Czech Republic? Can you do that?
Well, I would say you can't entirely avoid it. A troubled youth who has access to weaponry, assault rifles and the like, is not a great combination. All you can do is try and minimise it as best you can. None of us, I'm afraid, live in a risk-free world. But you can reduce the opportunity. You won't ever eliminate it.
You do also wonder, don't you, whether these social media platforms could be doing more to raise an alert more quickly, because time and again, and it's true, I think, in this case, that he did post something online that suggested he was going to go on a shooting spree. And I know that you can't say everybody can be watching their, the output of absolutely everybody, but you do wonder whether there couldn't be AI used now to spot particular target words and maybe alert everyone sooner.
There's no question that that whole social media fraternity need to be a bit more responsible and lean in to help out the general public across the world. And I think, again, someone should be pressing hard for the social media, the great giants of that arena, to look carefully at how they manage themselves in such an incident.
OK, Major Michael Shearer, very good to see you this morning. Thank you for your analysis. And of
Right.
course, our condolences go to those 14 people who very, very sadly lost their lives.
But when something
yesterday.
happens in an educational institution like this, everybody is affected, aren't they?
Yes.
You know, the students you're with, even if you don't actually know any of the victims, I think youngsters at that university will all feel deeply traumatised, and just before Christmas.
Yeah.
It's terrible, isn't it?
Absolutely terrible.
We'll move on, though. It's just coming up to 12 minutes past 7.
Yes, it's the nightmare before Christmas. Festive getaways have been thrown into chaos with the arrival of Storm Pia.
More delays are expected after all lines to and from London Euston were blocked earlier, whilst Eurostar and Eurotunnel services were cancelled by a last-minute walkout in France.
And today is also set to be the busiest day on the roads during the festive period. So I wonder how that's going to look today.
Yeah, let's see what it's like up at Birmingham's New Street station. And let's cross live to Jack Carson. How are things up there? Very quiet and very cold by the look of it, Jack.
Well, yeah, so far so good when it comes to the travel chaos here in Birmingham, but I'm sure it's not going to stay that way for much longer as we get further into the day and people start to head home for Christmas. Of course, as you were mentioning there, London Euston's going to have a big part to play in whether travel here at Birmingham New Street goes as smoothly as possibly it could be. Of course, the West Coast Main Line running to London Euston, that's going to be certainly a busy one as people in both directions rather trying to get down further south for Christmas or come maybe back home here in Birmingham. And of course, it was Storm Pia that was causing the problems at Euston, damage to overhead wires, causing complete cancellations there at that station. And as you mentioned as well, in London at King's Cross St Pancras, that Eurostar strike, which did and was resolved overnight. So they are saying this morning that they are going to put on extra trains per hour to try and clear that backlog and try and get people home. But of course, when you've got the passengers that are already booked on their trains on the Eurostar today, on top of the ones that couldn't travel yesterday trying to get home today, you can see how very quickly that disruption, that congestion of people down there in London can of course increase. Storm Pia will be certainly one to watch around the country. It did cause cancellations on multiple train networks across the country and airports as well, particularly up in Yorkshire. Already this morning, the Met Office reporting wind speeds of up to 79 miles an hour in West Yorkshire, the highest wind speed so far as Storm Pia continues to batter part of the country is in the Shetland, 81 miles an hour. So it's still certainly having an effect up there in Scotland. Now down here in Birmingham, things are a little bit less on the windy side, but of course it's the road networks around here that are really going to be ones to watch. 13.5 million people expected to travel today. That's around 60% of all the travel that's going to go on around the Christmas period, and it's going to be people possibly breaking down, that causing congestion. The RAC, of course, urging people to check their cars before their travel, but we'll have more on the travel chaos for you a little bit later on in the programme.
Oh, yes, we feel for you, Jack.
Go get yourself a nice cup of tea, we think, Jack. But thank you. Really good advice there for people heading out on the roads.
You feel for everybody at the moment. If you're waiting to meet somebody who is going to travel to you on a train, or you are going to travel and see family, it's just awful that it's happening right now.
Really felt for those people at Euston and King's Cross yesterday trying to get all over the country.
Yeah.
And at one point, the station was totally shut off. You weren't going anywhere for several hours. And then it was raining and windy.
Get in touch with us if your Christmas plans have had to be changed because of all of this. Do feel for you. GB News the other way around, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, in an exclusive interview with GB News, Sir Keir Starmer has been giving some insight into what kind of Prime Minister he would be.
Yeah, actually, more importantly, he's been telling our political editor, Christopher Hope, how he would handle immigration and the threat from Russia.
He did not rule out launching nuclear weapons to protect the UK on a visit to British troops in Estonia near the border with Russia.
And the Labour leader also said that he would consider setting up offshore processing centres to deal with the surge in small boats.
So, Keir Starmer, we're here in Estonia on the Russian border. It's a short drive away. How safe is the UK under a Labour government?
Absolutely. Well, there's been an unshakable commitment to NATO ever since NATO was first created, which of course was under a Labour government. This is my second time here to this base. I'm here today to say thank you to the troops, to reinforce Labour's unwavering commitment to NATO, but also, of course, our unwavering commitment to Ukraine. And I've observed, I was here 18 months ago, here today, there's a real driving sense of purpose here with the troops that are here on the front line since that breach of the border into Ukraine just 18 months or so ago.
If you win power, will you increase defence spending beyond 2.12% of GDP?
Well, we will always keep to our NATO commitments. I think what you saw at the end of the last Labour government was 2.5%. So we're clear that the first duty of government is the protection of the country. And so we're very, very clear about that in terms of the resource that must go with that commitment.
And the ambition is for it to increase?
Well, when the last Labour government was in power, it was 2.5%. But, there is a NATO commitment here, which we will always make sure that we maintain.
How far would you be willing to go personally to protect the UK? Would you launch nuclear weapons at Britain's enemies?
I think that the nuclear deterrent is very important to us. Obviously, I'm not going to discuss with you the circumstance in which they may or may not be used, but it is a very important part of the defence of our country that we are strongly committed to, along with our commitment to NATO and to the security of our nation, which is paramount.
Well, listening to how he's speaking, you have to ask yourself, is he priming himself for the job of PM? Is he coming over as a future PM? Joining us now to discuss this, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib. Very good morning to you. What do you think of him sounding prime ministerial?
Well, I think Sir Keir is trying to do whatever he can to wrap himself in small c conservatism, which, lots of Labour voters are, disposed to, small c conservatism. And you saw the Union Jack behind him there, and you heard him talk about the need for strong defence policy and his preparedness, as you said, Anne, to set up offshore processing centres. Something he's turned his nose at before and refused to entertain. And we heard him the other day describe himself, pro-Thatcherite. So I think Sir Keir is doing whatever he can to allay the electorate's fear that actually this is going to be a swing back to, traditional Labour policies, which are even worse than the borrow, tax and spend policies of the incumbent government. So he is trying to paint himself as a prime ministerial candidate, and whether or not the electorate buy it remains to be seen.
And what do you make of the optics of this visit? Because it is all about the optics, isn't it? Sir Keir Starmer and the Shadow Defence Secretary, John Healey, we've just seen the images of them there, shaking hands with the troops there at the base in Estonia. We saw that quite traditional footage of Sir Keir Starmer, which we'd usually see a Prime Minister serving Christmas dinner to the troops in Estonia. He is trying to portray himself as somewhat of a statesman on this trip, isn't he?
He is, and, all credit to him for trying. But I'm not sure the British people buy it. If you look at the by-election results that have Thatcham and the other one, Mid Bedfordshire, the other day, the Labour voters did not come out. The Labour vote in those by-elections were pretty much what they were in Tamworth in Mid Bedfordshire. It's very early and odd in the morning. The Labour vote in those two by-elections was pretty much what they were last time round when the Tories won it. It's just that the Tories are staying at home, and I think that's why he's particularly trying to appeal to the Conservative side of the electorate, try and get them out and vote for him. And at the moment, of course, Reform UK, which is my party, is unashamedly small c Conservative, pulling on both the sort of centre-right traditional Conservative voters, as well as those vast majority of Labour people who are proud of the country, who want to promote the working class, who want to cut back on immigration. And he's got to somehow get through the middle. And even though the polls suggest that Sir Keir is quite a long way ahead of the Labour Party is quite a long way ahead of the Conservative Party, actually it's not playing out in the by-elections.
No, and one always wonders how it always plays out in a general election. Ben Habib, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Right, it's 6:21. And if you've just joined us, a reminder of our top stories this morning.
Yes, a gunman has killed 15 people and wounded at least 24 others at a Prague university yesterday, where the killer himself was a student. The Czech Republic has declared tomorrow a national day of mourning.
Well, the nightmare before Christmas happens again. The UK is braced for the annual travel chaos, but it's set to be even worse in the aftermath of Storm Pia. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson is at Birmingham's New Street station, and he'll bring you the very latest.
The Home Office has made a U-turn on its decision to hike the earnings threshold for a family visa to £38,700. Instead, it will increase it to £29,000 in the spring. This is the visa which allows British citizens to bring foreign family members to the UK if they earn enough money.
OK, well, it seemed very wet and dank where I was this morning, and I don't think it's going to be snowy or anything exciting. Not that I mean, I do know snow isn't always exciting. Shall we find out what the weather is going to bring us? Over to Annie.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Today's going to be another windy day. Not quite as windy as yesterday, but there'll be some quite persistent rain and showers across more northern and eastern areas. In the south and west, though, it should be a much drier and brighter day, and there is a chance of seeing some sunshine through the afternoon here. However, this band of rain will continue to stream into more northwestern areas, parts of southwestern Scotland, northwestern England, Northern Ireland as well. And the far northeast of Scotland will see some snow showers through the afternoon, as well as Shetland seeing snow to lower levels. So there is a snow and ice warning in force here. It will be a cold breeze across northeasterly areas, by contrast staying mild in the far southwest. That band of rain then pushes further east throughout the course of the night, and as it pushes into the colder air, it brings a risk of some snow to lower levels for northeastern Scotland, parts of Caithness, for example, and we'll see some quite persistent rain across many central and northwestern areas of Scotland. Staying dry though further south, another fairly mild night with the breeze still continuing. We could a further risk of snow continuing on Saturday morning for the far northeast of Scotland. Further south, though, it should stay dry once again, perhaps some early sunshine in the south and east. But by the afternoon, that rain does slowly start to sink southwards into more northern areas of England, North Wales, as well as a risk of some showers to parts of the southwest. But it should stay mild for the bulk of the country, but the far north staying in the colder air.
Well, thanks very much to Annie for that. Time for our great British giveaway now. And Tom Skinner is live for us this morning in East London. A very good morning, Tom.
How you doing, all right? You good? How are you?
Hi, Tom. We can't see you yet, but we imagine you're there in the dark somewhere.
The cameraman's broke, isn't he?
And the light's just gone out where you are.
We might have to come back to you, Tom. We can't see you, but we imagine you're somewhere in the dark.
Oh, no, hang on, the lights came on then.
Oh, hang on.
It always helps to switch the lights on.
Morning, Tom.
How are you? How you doing? You sweet?
Yeah, we're good. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm waiting for my Christmas dinner this morning. Dino's Cass.
Oh, well, it looks great. What are you going to have?
Christmas dinner.
Christmas dinner at this time of the morning?
A bit early.
Ernie, you got Christmas dinners on, haven't you? Yeah. We've got to have them all day, every day. It's December.
Every day,
Well, go on, Tom. You're there for a reason. Tell us about the Great British Giveaway.
Oh, the Great British Takeaway. No, I'm joking. The Great British Giveaway. So, listen, we are giving away £10,000, an iPhone 15 Pro and £500 shopping vouchers. So you've got to get involved. What a lovely prize just before Christmas as well. There are some terms and conditions. Just make sure you look at those. But you've got to be in it to win it. Bosh!
For another chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Thanks, Tom Skinner, for that. Would you have a Christmas dinner at this time of the morning?
Yes, actually.
Yeah, and so would I, to be fair.
If you get up really early, you don't want just croissants and marmalade, do you, at this time? You actually want something with a bit of oomph to it. So I don't blame him.
Maybe he's onto something there. Stay with us. Coming up, we're going to have the latest sports with Paul Coit, who'll be here in the studio with us. This is GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 6:28 and you are watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Ellie.
Yeah. Should we go through all the sport now? Paul Coit has joined us. Hello there.
Hello, lovely to see you. I love the red and the green.
Thank you.
It really is.
It was very festive of us this
Very
morning.
festive. Now, something that probably isn't quite so festive, although certain people in Europe think it is the European Super League, which has reared its ugly head again. Now, the way it was all came about, we're looking back about just under 3 years ago, where European superpowers in football decided that, you know what, we don't need the Champions League. We don't need UEFA. We could set our own thing going here and then we can make loads of money.
Yeah,
because at the end of the day, that's what it is all about.
It's always about the money.
It's always about the money. So then there was a huge backlash. There were English teams that were involved. There was Liverpool, and then there was Arsenal, and then there's Man City, and the Spurs were involved there as well. There's 6 of them. So to cut a very long story short, they said they're very interested. They wanted to get involved, and they didn't realise how the fans would feel.
Yes, it was fan power, wasn't it?
It really was.
Turned it down.
It was fan power, and a lot of
Sorry, that's the only bit I know.
Very aggressive, Anne. Very aggressive.
You never fail to surprise me, Anne. But yeah, absolutely right. It was the fans that actually said, you know, we're not having this. So there was a big U-turn by a lot of the teams that were saying, well, we never really wanted to be involved in it. Well, no, of course we're going to listen to the fans, but they really had no choice.
Can you explain to me why didn't the fans want it? Because they'd still get their football, wouldn't they?
Well, there's more reasons around it, because then it would affect. They were going to say they were going to ring fence it. To cut a long story short, and they would only have a certain amount of big teams in this, and it would then move them away from Champions League. It would also affect them in the Premier League as well. But I think it's the whole money thing, because all they see is greed, and they see these clubs that are going for this. So anyway, it was moved away. We're not going to do it. We're not going to touch it. There's 9 out of the 12 teams moved away from this. Now, there was a ruling in the European Court of Justice yesterday, and they actually said that they can actually go ahead with this. Now, FIFA and UEFA, they said, abused a dominant position by threatening to sanction against players in clubs taking part. Rules that demand prior approval from inter-club football projects were unlawful, and the most important thing, restriction of trade. So they're saying that the clubs should be able to do anything. Now, where we go now, there are only 2 clubs that are still saying they want part of this, and this is Real Madrid and Barcelona. Whether anybody else is going to jump in, I'll be surprised, because the group that set the whole thing up have said, look, we want 64 teams, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But most of the English teams have actually said, you know what?
You're right, thanks.
We don't want any part of it. We're going to stick with UEFA, and also with the new government ruling about who's going to oversee football in the future, there's a ruling in there that says that there can't be any other moves to any other leagues.
So it might be the Spanish Super League with Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Yeah, can you imagine that? So that's how we're looking.
A very small league.
Yeah. 2 clubs will play each other a lot and try and make a lot of money.
Yeah, it doesn't work if those major British clubs don't get involved.
Of course it doesn't. No, of course it doesn't. We need those. And it's not, I said they need those, but I very much be surprised if it's going to happen. Everybody stepped away from it, apart from, I think it's Arsenal and Liverpool haven't put out a statement yet, and I'm sure they will, that are going to distance themselves away from it as well.
And just very briefly, Luke Littler. We were talking about him yesterday.
Luke. So Luke is 16. Have you heard about Luke, Anne? 16-year-old.
You like him, he's only 16.
World darts champion.
Oh, he's that very young darts champion, yes.
Yeah, he's in the World Darts Championship. He's now won in the 2nd round, so he's now going to move on to the 3rd round. I think we've got a little footage of him as well. Look, that's him now. I looked at him and I thought he looks like a man in his 30s.
No, he looks about 13.
See, you say that. I think he looks like... He doesn't look like a 16-year-old.
But then he is a dart player.
That's true, but the thing is, they're not healthier than they used to be.
They're
not like they used to be in the old days. But anyway, I think we've got... Look, there he is. You know, I could probably say this is him 6 months ago, because he's still just a kid, but there we are. You can see the talent there from the start.
Gosh, he's very good, isn't he?
He's gone from 66 to 1 outsider.
Listening on the radio, we are looking at pictures of him. He must have been about 2.5.
I know, and little Luke.
Throwing darts
little Luke Littler.
At a dartboard.
And even littler.
He's so chuffed because he's getting a hole-in-one, or whatever you call it.
A hole-in-one.
Hole-in-one.
Yeah.
Wrong sport, but I get the idea. But anyway, he's throwing some
He's always been very good.
Throwing some very good arrows, and he's at 60. He was at 66 to 1 at the start of the tournament. He's now down to 10 to 1. But unfortunately, he can't bet. Firstly, because he's a professional. Secondly, because he's actually too young to anything.
He's only
Underage.
16.
How lovely.
Thank you, Paul Coit.
Pleasure.
Good to see you.
Yeah, we'll see you again. Yeah.
Yes, look forward to it.
Now, do stay with us. Coming up, we're going to run you through the front pages of the newspapers with our very own special husband and wife team, Claire Pearsall and Nigel Nelson.
And our reporter, Lisa Hartle, will be joining Transport Secretary Mark Harbour at Tiggywinkles. That's the sort of hedgehog and wildlife hospital, as he announced measures to reduce animal road deaths. Fascinating stuff. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m.
We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And a very good morning. Let's have a look at through the newspapers, I think. We've got Nigel Nelson and Claire Pearsall with us. We'll have a look at those in a moment. First of all, let's run through today's top stories.
A gunman has killed at least 14 people and wounded at least 25 others at a Prague university yesterday, where the killer himself was a student. It's the worst fatal shooting since Czech independence 30 years ago, but it's not being treated as a terrorist incident.
And the nightmare before Christmas is already happening. The UK braced for the annual travel chaos, but it is set to be even worse in the aftermath of Storm Pia. Adding to that, yesterday's unexpected strikes by Eurotunnel French site staff will add to the trouble disruption of those who want to get back home for Christmas.
Government rose back on their legal migration plan. The earnings threshold to bring foreign family members to the UK will be £29,000 and not the £38,700 previously announced by the Home Office. The new increase will kick in the spring as planned.
And Sir Keir Starmer says he has not ruled out launching nuclear weapons to protect the UK if he should become Prime Minister. Speaking exclusively to GB News, he said he was keen to increase defence spending.
We're clear that the first duty of government is the protection of the country, and so we're very, very clear about that in terms of the resource that must go with that commitment. But there is a NATO commitment here which we will always make sure that we maintain.
Well, we are here with Nigel Nelson, our senior political commentator, and the former Conservative advisor, Claire Pearsall, our favourite husband and wife duo, to go through the papers with us this morning. And Claire, this has caught mine and Anne's eye this morning. It's the front page of The Sun, an exclusive interview with the missing teenager Alex Batty about why he had to come home.
I think this is such a great story, especially at Christmas time. And he's come back to the UK. He's going to live with his nan, who's been granted the custody order to look after him until he's 18. But the thought process of somebody who left the UK at the age of 11 is now a young man. And you look at the photograph of him, I mean, it's a beautiful picture on the front page. He's a really good-looking lad, but he had just had enough of traipsing around and not going to school and having to work to be able to live somewhere, and he really wants to go into computing and the cyber industry.
Good
and
for
he's
him.
he's been learning French, he's been learning another language all by himself, books that he's picked up, people that he's met without proper schooling since the age of 11. And he just decided that he wanted to come home because he realised that this was not a normal existence. And he said he loves his mother dearly, but she was not a very good mother in the sense of all of the other things that a mother brings you.
He said she's a good person, but not a good mother.
A great quote, I thought, from him, which just shows his maturity, that his mum's a good person, but not a good mother.
Yeah.
But equally saying, but I still love my mother. There was no question of that. But it was things like not being able to meet other kids of his own age. But it sounds like he's actually made a very thoughtful decision about, hang on, this is where my life should now go. It can't be ruled by my mother, and that's why he decided to come home.
And do you remember he turned up at a school in France and asked if he could enrol? And they did test him, and they found that he had incredibly good computer skills.
Yes.
He really knew his stuff. They were very, very impressed by him. But he was using a different name, and in the end, they couldn't trace him, even though they did tell the police in France.
Oh, that's right. He was using an alias. I think it was Zach was his alias. And because he had no paperwork, no ID documents, he couldn't enrol into the school, which is what prompted, I think, his journey back to the United Kingdom. And he walked for several days, him, his backpack and his skateboard, until he was picked up by a delivery driver at sort of 3 a.m. in the pouring rain. And the story came out. I think after you've been walking for 4 days, you've slept out, you're tired. He felt bad then that he'd given all of this information out. And when you read it, it's absolutely heartbreaking. This is a teenager who should be sitting in his room like every other teenager,
Playing computer games,
stating that they hate their parents and all the rest of it. And he was worried that his mother and his grandfather would get into trouble. And that was one of his abiding memories, that they are good people. I don't want them to get into trouble. I don't really want to tell people my story, but I also want to be able to go home.
He seems like such a lovely young man, doesn't he? And also so brave, so courageous.
Absolutely, And again, just to use the word, but maturity again. He's thought everything through, which is absolutely fantastic. It wasn't a kind of spur of the moment, I must run away. This was a calculated attempt to get back to what he thought was going to be a normal life.
Yeah, good for him.
Tell you what, before we move on, just where's that picture of him and his nan? There. I mean, this is a Sun exclusive, so I'll show you in the paper. But I mean, that's the picture we were all hoping for in the end, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's lovely, isn't it?
Him and his nan, they're back together. And look how thrilled she looks. It's just the most brilliant story.
What a great Christmas they're going to have.
Yeah, that'll be a lovely Christmas. And it will be a documentary, I'm sure, because it's just the most incredible story, isn't it?
It'll be a documentary and a drama, won't it?
Yeah, definitely. Nigel, let's have a look at page 4 of the Eye, shall we? And this is Brianna J, just the most horrific story. 2 16-year-olds now have been found guilty of her murder, and now they're going to be named.
Yes, and I think this sounds like the right decision by the judge. Up until now, the 2 killers have only been known as Girl X and Boy Y. And the judge has taken the unusual decision. I mean, they're 16 now, committed the murder when they were 15. That because of the horrific nature of it, I mean, Brianna was stabbed 28 times, that they should be named. It's very unusual to name minors in court cases, and the idea is to try and protect them so after they've finished whatever sentence it is, that they will then be able to live a normal life after that. The judge here says, look, this crime is so horrific, you've got to know who these people are, you've got to understand whatever motivated them to go and do it.
Do you think that's right, though? I mean, do you think that's right that we need to know their names?
Well,
I'm just thinking it exposes their families, their friends, it exposes their schools, everybody who's ever been in their circle.
It does, and it was quite interesting that Brianna's mother said that she wished no pain on the families, and she was at pains to point out that they should not be targeted for the actions of their children, which I don't think I would have had the same level of respect, perhaps, as she does at that time. I don't think I would be thinking that rationally. And I think you're right, there is always the risk that the families and the friends and the extended families get tarred with the same brush. But I think in a crime which is this heinous, I think justice outweighs.
Yeah,
all
it depends
of
on the level of
that.
the crime, doesn't it? In the same way that James Bulger's...
Lucy, did it do us any good to know the names of Venables and Thompson?
Well, I rather think that it meant that there was a focus on them for the rest of their lives. I mean, it was such a horrific crime, as this one is, that it's not something you can just sort of shrug off in later life. And I think that with those two, it kept a focus on them. They have a different identity now, but it kept a focus on them. And I think that as part of the punishment, if you are guilty of something so horrible, that's when the judge is right to decide to name.
And many people say, why should they be protected by a cloak of anonymity when the crime is quite as horrific as this one? I mean, the judge said in this case that it was the level of public interest that people have a right to know the names.
And there is another point there. I mean, obviously, if you have people who are anonymous, in family courts, for instance, they don't name anybody. You never see any coverage of family courts, so justice is not seen to be done. And I think it's important to actually name people in situations like this. So the publicity machine does get around them, so people know exactly what has been done in the past and what is going on. And in general terms, children 16 and under shouldn't be named in court. That should be the general principle. This is the exception.
I'm not sure about that. I'm a bit uneasy about it, but mainly because I'm not sticking up in any way for them individually. I just don't know whether it does us any good. Has it done us any good to know about Venables and Thompson? They've got different identities anyway. So their names don't mean anything,
I can
do
see
they?
that, but also in this day and age with social media, if you don't name them, the sort of ensuing chaos that you get of everybody naming varying different people and unsubstantiated names going forward, or indeed the real names and everybody saying we know it is, you get an awful lot of fake news, you get an awful lot of abuse, you get these sort of mob hatred gangs popping up, and you kind of think if you take the oxygen out of that and put the names out there, they are going to be probably remanded into prison for some considerable period of time, and then they will get their new identities and it will die down. I think if you just take that out of it by saying these are the names, you stop all of that speculation, you stop people being
I do take that point. I absolutely take that point. Yeah.
Well, you will certainly have an opinion on that at home. Should those two 16-year-old killers be named? They are going to be, the judge has decided. What do you think about that and what it means? GBviews at gbnews.com. Now, Keir Starmer was speaking to broadcasters yesterday about assisted dying. So let's have a little listen to this clip and then we'll have a discussion about it.
On the question of assisted dying, there are obviously strong views both ways on this, which I respect. I personally do think there are grounds for changing the law. We have to be careful. But it would have to be, I think, a free vote on an issue where there are such divided and strong views.
Of course, this comes off the back of Dame Esther Rantzen, a national treasure, and her fight against lung cancer. She's now at stage 4, and she has spoken about joining Dignitas Clinic in Switzerland and pursuing assisted dying in that clinic. She's urging MPs for a free vote in government. And Keir Starmer, what do you make of his thoughts on that, Claire?
I think it's right that we open up this discussion. We need to be able to have a sensible debate on what we would look at as to be acceptable. It is one of those issues, and I think I've changed my mind. I was always really against it because I thought that it was unnecessary and it would be used as an excuse to get rid of old people and all the rest of it. But when you start sort of removing that and you look at the reasons, and I think Esther Rantzen lays it out very, very well, and it's a very personal thing to her. I think that we need to discuss it, but I worry that with the atmosphere in the House of Commons, with heated debate on both sides, whether you are ever going to come to a conclusion. I think it's going to take somebody very brave to stand up and say we need to change the law. No politician is going to want to do that. And Keir Starmer, for all of the sort of bravery of of putting it out there, has still said it will be a free vote, so my hands are clean. And I think that we really need to look at what we do with palliative care in this country. We need to look at care packages around people with terminal illnesses, but also people with disabilities. I don't think we look at that and look at the quality of their life and what we do to help it well enough in this country. So I think we're a little bit far removed from having the law there.
I sort of differ with Claire on this one in the sense that I'm uncomfortable about a law that actually sets all this down. That what we're talking about here is the assisted dying bit. So the help that somebody would give to end their life who can't do it on their own. And yes, there's always the worry about, is it because you want granny's inheritance or something like that? I think that's at the extreme end. The way the law seems to work at the moment is that the police do get involved, but they actually use a lot of common sense about whether it's in the public interest to prosecute or not. And a lot of people simply just get let off. Now, I know that's not perfect in the sense that there's no specific law laid down. It's down to the judgment of police to do it. But it does seem to me that if you take each individual case, that's probably the best way of making a judgment rather than a hard and fast law covering them all.
I mean, the point is, though, that Dame Diana Rigg made the point, and Esther Rantzen is doing the same, that if she takes herself off to Dignitas, she'll have to do it on her own.
Yes.
People who go to Dignitas have to do it, and they die alone, not with their loved ones, because their loved ones face the fear of prosecution.
Yeah.
But that's
and even going to be
yeah.
with them.
But that's the point I'm making is, in a situation like that, with Diana Rigg or say Esther Rantzen, that if one of their loved ones went there, would the police go and prosecute on a thing like that? I mean, it's pretty unlikely when they came back the police would actually take a case against them.
What do you think, Anne?
I'm completely divided, because I do know that countries like Canada, like Holland, that do this have found that there is an increase in people wanting it, and even children.
Oh.
And then even people who say that they are mentally stressed and can't cope with life anymore. And so the sort of people who are eligible for it and are putting themselves forward for assisted dying tend to be people that you actually never realised it would start to encompass. And a lot of people say, be very careful what you wish for, because it could, in 20 years' time, we could be a country where young people want it because they simply can't face the world anymore, or people with mental health problems who maybe could be helped in other ways.
Which apparently is already happening in Canada.
It is, apparently in Canada it is, and they found themselves facing real problems with it. So where do you draw the line? It's, as you said, how do you draw up the law to prevent? Anyway, do let us know your views. Yeah, it's a very dismal subject, but thank God there are people like Esther Rantzen who, I mean, she's such an incredible, she's my hero, always has been. I just can't bear the idea that we'll lose her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it?
Yes, it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shall we move on? It's 9 minutes to 7 already. Now, a wildlife hospital had an unlikely helping hand when it came to weighing hedgehogs recently.
Yes, it came in the form of Transport Minister Mark Harper, who went to Tiddlywinkles in Buckinghamshire for an announcement he hopes will save very small mammals' lives whilst protecting drivers too. Lisa Hartle, our London reporter, went along, and just a warning that this report does contain flashing images.
Do you want to look your hello hedgehog, meet hedgehog
Usually it's movement of people that the Transport Secretary is concerned with, but today it's about creatures like this hedgehog and the road signs that could protect them. Local authorities can now choose where to put this signage without going through government, something Mark Harper hopes will save time and the lives of small mammals.
I'm making it much easier for local authorities to use that sign in the future. So at the moment, if they want to use it in an area where there's a risk, either mammals from motorists or motorists from mammals, they have to go through a complicated procedure to use it. What I'm saying now, I'm pre-authorising the use of it. So in future, if local authorities think there's a need to use it, they can go ahead and do so. We don't have to come to my department for permission. And I hope that'll mean that we'll see more use of the sign in sensible places where local conditions determine.
Thousands of animals are treated each year at the Tiddlywinkles Hospital in Buckinghamshire for injuries sustained on the roads.
About 30% of our patients are road traffic accidents. We have probably 14,000 casualties a year. So that's quite a few thousand that come in through road traffic accidents. Normally foxes, badgers, deer and hedgehogs. So I think for every sign that's out there in the right area, an impact position, if people just catch their eye, they'll be able to slow down and be aware that there could be something crossing the road. It could be a hedgehog, it could be a frog or a toad in the season. So it's a really big step and a really good thing.
Thanks to the incredible work of the staff here, animals are given the best treatment available.
You know, we give them injections of antibiotics, painkillers, we do hydrotherapy, we will even do surgery with putting a pin into a broken leg, all sorts our vets will do, yeah.
Just before we left, I had a very important question for the Transport Secretary.
And finally, how would you rate your hedgehog experience today?
10 out of 10. It was a great experience today. I was able to weigh a hedgehog, one almost at the weight it needs to be at before it's released into the wild, and the hedgehog was very interested in looking at the sign. Obviously recognised the picture. This is a great organisation here. They do fantastic work in getting animals back to health before they release them into the wild. So all power to their elbow. And anyone watching this, if you've got any money spare, feel free to donate it.
Lisa Hartle, GB News, Buckinghamshire.
Oh, well, they're just wonderful.
We've just been oohing and ahhing in the studio for the last few minutes. But you found a hedgehog recently, haven't you?
In my shed, I found there's a gap under the shed, and that's what you're meant to do nowadays. You're meant to leave gaps under fences and things like that, so that hedgehogs can wander because they like to. Oh, see how I did that? This curled up ball, and it looked quite fat, and I reckon it must be pregnant. So I left it totally alone, didn't touch anything in the shed. That was my excuse. And when I went back 2 weeks later, it had gone. So she's wandered off, and I don't know whether she's had her babies or not.
But didn't leave any babies behind?
No, didn't leave any babies behind. So,
let's hope she's safe and sound.
But, I mean, how recently have you ever seen a hedgehog?
Yes, no, we do out in the countryside.
Oh, good.
We see quite a few. There's the stables that we've got the horse at, there are huge amounts of fields, and there are families of foxes and rabbits and hedgehogs. And
just
you see
like
them under the
Beatrix
piles
Potter
of
where
wood.
you live.
It is, and under the piles of wood. And there's special forks that you can get. So when you're raking leaves and making bonfires and things like that, there's a special hedgehog fork that you can get so that you don't stab the hedgehog when you're doing it, so they can live safely. And
I love that. I learn something new every day.
Get to see them.
Thank you for that little moment. Shall we catch up with the weather and see if it's good for hedgehogs?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Today's going to be another windy day. Not quite as windy as yesterday, but there'll be some quite persistent rain and showers across more northern and eastern areas. In the south and west, though, it should be a much drier and brighter day, and there is a chance of seeing some sunshine through the afternoon here. However, this band of rain will continue to stream into more northwestern areas, parts of southwestern Scotland, northwestern England, Northern Ireland as well. And the far northeast of Scotland will see some snow showers through the afternoon, as well as Shetland seeing snow to lower levels, so there is a snow and ice warning in force here. It will be a cold breeze across northeasterly areas, by contrast staying mild in the far southwest. That band of rain then pushes further east throughout the course of the night, and as it pushes into the colder air, it brings a risk of some snow to lower levels for northeastern Scotland, parts of Caithness for example, and we'll see some quite persistent rain across many central and northwestern areas of Scotland. Staying dry though further south, another fairly mild night with the breeze still continuing. We could a further risk of snow continuing on Saturday morning for the far northeast of Scotland. Further south, though, it should stay dry once again, perhaps some early sunshine in the south and east. But by the afternoon, that rain does slowly start to sink southwards into more northern areas of England, North Wales, as well as a risk of some showers to parts of the southwest. But it should stay mild for the bulk of the country, but the far north staying in the colder air.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 22nd of December, with me, Ellie Costello, and Anne Diamond.
And these are today's top stories.
The Czech Republic will hold a day of mourning after 14 people were killed and 25 people were injured in a mass shooting at the university in Prague. It's the worst fatal shooting since Czech independence 30 years ago, but it's not being treated as a terrorist incident.
The nightmare before Christmas, the UK is braced for the annual travel chaos, but it is going to be even worse because of Storm Pia. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson is at Birmingham's New Street station with the very latest.
Yeah, well, as Storm Pia continues to batter parts of the UK, millions today are heading home on the trains and on the roads. I'll have the latest on how that travel chaos is shaping up for you from Birmingham.
Prince Andrew's alleged links with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein may come under increased scrutiny with the release of hundreds of files from a defamation case. The documents were filed as part of a lawsuit against the disgraced financier's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell.
And Sir Keir Starmer has not ruled out launching nuclear weapons to protect the UK if he became Prime Minister. Speaking exclusively to GB News, he said he was keen to increase defence spending.
That the first duty of government is the protection of the country, and so we're very, very clear about that in terms of the resource that must go with that commitment. But there is a NATO commitment here which we will always make sure that we maintain.
And are we getting another European Super League? Paul Coit has all the answers.
I have none of the answers. We'll see. It's probably going to happen again, but I don't think there's going to be English sides in it, but we'll talk about it a little bit later. Manchester City play Fluminense from Brazil in the Club World Cup final. Tom Lockyer, great news, has been discharged from hospital, and Luke Littler, the 16-year-old dart sensation, is through to the third round of the World Championships.
I love the name Fluminense.
So do I. I think there's a little Fluminense. At the end, I may give that a little flourish at the end.
Yes,
Fluminense.
Yes. Lovely. We like.
They're known as flu in
that's
Brazil,
not the same at
which
all.
doesn't really have the same ring.
You don't
to
want
it,
to be
does
flu.
No. Fluminense is nice though. Fluminense. Anyway, Annie is here with your weather.
Good morning. With just 3 days till Christmas, I'm sure you're interested in what the weather's doing. Well, you can find out all the details with me a little bit later on.
And there's been so many emails this morning or joining in the GB News breakfast conversations. Do keep them coming in, gbviews@gbnews.com, and we'll share some of them with you.
Phil said, I've just got up, turned on GB News, and I had to put my sunglasses on. Orange, red and green. Wow. Well, it is Christmas.
And do you want to hear the best bit? Anne went, where's the orange? And I went, this massive wall behind us.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it is breakfast and we like to wake you up in the morning. I think we're achieving that. Joe from Welling in Kent, good morning to you, says, what a glamorous pair this morning reading the news.
Yes.
She won't be able to watch much of it because she's off to work, going to do a hospital, volunteering in a hospital shop. I've been doing it for nearly 15 years.
Well done, you.
But don't worry, I will tape it and watch you later today. Well, Joe, you're very good. Thank you so much for watching and good luck at work today.
Stuart's telling me off for apparently saying the time wrong. I do tend to do that. I'm sorry about that.
You're wishing the morning away.
Well, I said it was 12 minutes past 7 when it was actually 12 minutes past 6. However, it is actually 3 minutes past 7 at the moment.
Yeah, I think you can be forgiven for that one. We're talking about Starmer, who was in Estonia yesterday, visiting British troops there. Michael from Sheffield says flip-flop Starmer is going nuclear now. Not long ago, he's backing Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister, who would have abolished the nuclear deterrent, along with most of our armed forces. Never trust a socialist, says Michael.
And I was also talking a bit earlier about the perils of underfloor heating.
You were.
When you're putting Christmas presents under the tree. Because I suddenly realised that I was about to yesterday, and I realised there was quite a lot of chocolate in at least 2 or 3 of the boxes I was going to put under the tree. And they would be, melted by Christmas morning. So at the moment, they're all lined up on the sofa. But Mandy agrees. She said, many years ago, we moved into a house with underfloor heating just a week before Christmas. And we managed to put up a simple tree with the gifts underneath it. It was only the next morning that I realised I'd bought my husband a chocolate fire engine.
Oh.
Needless to say, when opened, it was only about an inch high. As we didn't have kids, we could see the funny side. They might have cried, but we laughed a lot.
Oh, that's quite a nice memory, actually, to have together. And Tony from Bury St Edmunds says, the vegetable shopping is done. Is that shopping alone, just to get all the veggies?
Well, maybe they're vegetarian.
Oh, maybe. Last Christmas card put through the door. All done by 6 a.m. this morning. I'm not travelling this Christmas because what is the point? Yes, it's been chaos out there, especially if you're trying to get a train.
Why can't we get it right at time? We know at Christmas that people are going to be travelling a lot. And we also know the weather's going to be bad. So why does the country grind to a halt?
Well, I think this year it really has been a perfect storm, pardon the pun.
Yeah.
Because we've had all that traffic that we usually do have, the demand on the roads and the rails, but then also this dreadful weather.
Yeah, but that's
the
still
wind.
an excuse, isn't it? Other countries manage.
I know, but even just one speck of rain, I feel like the trains ground to a halt. It's just, I don't know what it is about us. We don't seem to be able to cope very well. Do keep those emails coming in. We love your company this time in the morning. So gbviews@gbnews.com. Do keep those coming in.
Right now, I'll check that it is indeed 7:05, as it is, just about to become 6 minutes past 7. To our top story now, and the Czech Republic has declared Saturday a national day of mourning after a gunman killed 14 people and injured 25 at that university in Prague.
Yes, the Czech Interior Minister said there was no indication the killings had any connection with international terrorism, and police are still working to find a motive.
And police are also still working on the theory that the gunman might also have been responsible for the deaths of 2 people in a forest.
Well, this comes as a large number of weapons were found at the university building, where we understand that the gunman was himself a student. He also died, but it's not clear whether he shot himself or was shot dead by officers.
Well, joining us to discuss this again, former British Army spokesperson Major Michael Shearer. It's interesting, Michael, isn't it, that we're beginning to learn more of what might have been his activities during the day. We understand he may have been responsible for the death of his father. Now we're learning about 2 people in a forest, and then clearly he went on to the university.
Indeed. I think the first thing I would say is I give out big condolences to all those involved, friends, family, and indeed the Czech people who are not used to this type of activity on their doorstep. But you're right, there does seem to be some perhaps coincidences, and I know that the police are considering whether or not a week ago today, in fact, in a little village outside Prague, that a young father and his child were murdered.
Oh.
And was that a dry run?
So this may be the 2 people they're talking about who were in the forest?
That is correct, yeah. I spoke to a friend of mine who lives in Prague last evening, and he was telling me that there's now speculation that may well have been a dry run for today.
Oh, I mean, what do you make then of the police response? Because they have been applauded for it online, saying that they reacted very quickly. I think they were on the scene within about 10 minutes. But then you hear about those two people found dead in the forest. You hear about his father. It might indicate that there could have been some warnings there that could have prevented this perhaps from happening.
Hindsight, I guess, is a wonderful thing. And joining the dots in a country like the Czech Republic, why these things almost never happen. They're a very common sense type people, and when you're not used to such activity, whilst they may have contingencies for it, they won't immediately default to joining the dots in such a way that leads them directly to an individual. And how would they know where he was in any case, exactly where he was? I think the bigger question is, why are these assault weapons in Prague? And I'm afraid, again, I haven't spoken to my friend last night, the gun laws in the Czech Republic are quite lax. And therefore, getting hold of such weapons, I think, is probably a lot easier than it would be in the rest of Europe. But I would say that the EU, as a result of this, probably need to look at whether or not the Schengen area is a good idea. It's almost civilization squared, if you like, trying to do the right thing, which is then going to harm you. And I just think if there were borders in place where checks were made consecutively as you were trying to import something, then they wouldn't be so freely available. And if they're in Prague, they can be anywhere in Europe.
What do you say to the people who put forward the argument that it's not guns that kill people, it's people that kill people?
Well, that is right. The executioner is the finger on the trigger, but look, we can't get away from the fact. I've heard the arguments. You can do it with a hammer, you can do it with a penknife, you can do it with a pen. But the fact is that these weapons can fire off so many rounds per minute that they become extraordinarily lethal, which is why they are known as assault
I mean, we're
rifles.
seeing there the picture of the gunman on the roof. Not only is he holding a gun, but he's actually put up the stand so that he is literally just going to be able to spray bullets anywhere beneath him. That makes him almost impossible to take down for the police, doesn't it?
Well, not impossible, but he is in a position there where he's overlooking the city and the campus, which makes him extraordinarily lethal. And I think that the real concern here has to be how the weapons, and I'm sure the Czech government will now revisit this quite sharpish. They are a very pragmatic people, but they need to tighten those laws. There is, in fact, a tourist industry that runs in the Czech Republic where people from all around Europe...
They go there to buy guns?
They go, well, not necessarily to buy, but to shoot them on ranges that they've set up.
Oh.
So there is an interest there. But assault rifles, as we see almost on a weekly basis from the United States, assault rifles are not a good place in civil society.
No. Major Michael Shearer, thank you very much for your analysis.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
It's 11 minutes past 7. The nightmare before Christmas. Festive getaways have been thrown into absolute chaos with the arrival of Storm Pia.
Yes, more delays are expected today after all lines to and from London Euston were blocked earlier, while Eurostar and Eurotunnel services were cancelled by a last-minute walkout in France.
And today is already set to be the busiest day on the roads.
Well, let's cross live now to Jack Carson, who's at Birmingham New Street Station for us this morning. And how's it looking there for you this morning, Jack? It does look quiet, but it does look very, very cold.
There's certainly been quite a few people already with suitcases going in, probably trying to catch those early trains before the big rush comes later today. We are expecting the busiest times of travel, both on the roads and on the rail networks, around lunchtime today. So that's people really already trying to get ahead of the curve, and it's probably quite sensible too, because of course we saw the impacts of Storm Pia yesterday across the country with branches and trees going across railway lines, causing cancellations and delays there, particularly in Scotland Scotland. Yellow weather warnings still are in place from the Met Office in parts of Scotland, so that could still cause problems on the rail and road networks there. And of course, branches and trees falling into roads also causing problems. But here at Birmingham New Street, so far today, so good. Trains starting to run on time, but of course the problems that Storm Pier caused at Euston Station, with problems with the overhead lines there, will have a big part to play in whether, of course, the West Coast Main Line, which runs here from Birmingham down to London Euston, will be able to run smoothly today. There was lots of cancellations out London Euston, which caused a complete blockage of that, and there'll be people trying to go in both directions to get home to their respective homes for Christmas. Now, for King's Cross and St Pancras, we saw the problems with the Eurostar, with the industrial action there. They are putting on extra trains per hour today to try and clear that backlog, because of course you've got that congestion of people from yesterday that have had their travel updated for today, and the people that were already planned to be going home today as well. Airports might have a problem with Storm Pier, particularly still up north. We saw problems at Birmingham Airport and also at Sheffield, Doncaster Sheffield Airport as well. Already today, the Met Office reporting that wind speeds of up to 79 miles an hour in parts of West Yorkshire, so still battering the country is Storm Pier. And already with the congestion on the roads, that's going to be one of the big problems for people getting home today. We expect 13.5 million people, according to the RAC, to be travelling home just today. That's around 60% of all the travel that they expect to be going on now before Christmas, and that's already causing problems down at the port of Dover as well. The Eurotunnel and the back end of that industrial action yesterday, meaning there are queues of already over a mile long. That was before 5 a.m. this morning. People say that they've already missed their ferries, and the port of Dover urging people that only drivers and their passengers with advance bookings will be able to travel today.
Well, Jack Carson, thank you very much for that update there at Birmingham New Street Station. Go get yourself a nice hot cup of tea now, warm up. I don't like seeing him looking so cold.
He's got his beanie hat on.
I know, great hat. Very good.
I can't get over the shot of that plane trying to land at Birmingham Airport.
Yeah, let's see if we can watch that again, shall we?
Can you imagine being on this plane? I mean, well done to the pilots, because they did eventually make it, but look at the struggle they're having. I mean, look, it looks as though they're actually hovering in midair, just trying to read the wind right, aren't they?
That makes my tummy go funny.
Can you imagine being on it?
No, you can't.
And then they obviously abort it and decide to go up again.
Oh.
And can you, again, if you're on board, you're thinking, what the heck is going on?
And then do they try and land it again?
Yeah,
do they eventually land?
Yes, they do. And it lands very well. It's coming in now again to land. And you'll see how they're still struggling, but they eventually make it.
Well, bravo to those brave pilots.
I just wonder, in that sort of circumstance, the pilots must be concentrating so much on trying to get it right. Does anyone go in on the tannoy to say, don't worry, we're trying, all the rest of it?
It's always difficult when that happens. I was on a flight recently and it was really bad turbulence, and I think it was exactly that, where they were so focused on getting us through it.
Yeah.
Nobody was saying that it was all OK, and we were trying to read their facial expressions, like, is everything OK?
If you were on that plane, get in touch. Tell us what it was like. Or if you've ever had a similar experience. Thank goodness pilots were as experienced and talented as they were, and they got it down in the end. Yeah, and even when it landed on the runway, it was sort of because they obviously still incredibly windy.
The crosswinds were bad, weren't they? Yes, do get in touch on that story or any of the stories that we're talking about this morning. gbnews@gbnews.com.
16 minutes past 7. If you've just joined us, here's a reminder of our top stories this morning.
Yes, a gunman has killed 15 people and wounded at least 24 others at a Prague university yesterday, where the killer himself was a student. The Czech Republic has declared tomorrow a national day of mourning.
And the nightmare before Christmas, as we've been talking about, the UK braced for the annual travel chaos, but it's going to be even worse, apparently now, because of Storm Pier. Road congestion is expected to peak today, so everyone is expected to travel today. Please check before you leave your house.
And the Home Office has made a U-turn on its decision to hike the earnings threshold for a family visa to £38,700. Instead, it will increase to £29,000 in the spring. This is the visa which allows British citizens to bring foreign family members to the UK, but only if they earn enough money.
And Dame Esther Ranson is urging politicians to grapple the issue on assisted dying. Sorry, that is not Dame Esther, but the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, backed her. Last time the issue was apparently voted on in the House of Commons was 2015. It is amazing Dame Esther Ranson has done so much in this country in various campaignings, which is why she's a dame now. But it's very interesting that she's chosen to make this a big issue as she fights stage 4 cancer herself. Karen from Bolton, morning Karen, says, I personally don't want to live if I get to the point where I've got no quality of life, or I'm in pain, or I don't know who my family are. The people who oppose it don't have to sign up to it, but for those of us who do want it, we should have that freedom of choice.
Lynn from Devon, good morning to you, says no one should ever die alone, in pain or distress, and yet they do. Doctors must be able to go back to giving patients in pain the extra medication if needed, even if that does result in a fractionally earlier death. That is what is needed, as well as not criminalising people who seek to kill themselves. We are so mealy-mouthed, we don't care about others' pain, just as long as we look good.
I think we do care about others' pain. It's just such a fraught issue because Paul said, is this not just a totally common sense option? Obviously, all actions must be taken to fully protect the individual who is making that decision. I've been there. I know the pressure of having a close relative who is in desperate pain day in, day out. Years of needless suffering from an illness that would never be cured.
And that's what Dame Esther Ranson has been saying, hasn't she? She said she was able to give her dog a really dignified, painless death, and she says that isn't going to be afforded to me. So it is really, really difficult.
And actually, Michael from Dunoon says, assisted dying is illegal, yet you can go into hospital and put in place a do not resuscitate. What's the difference? It's still choosing when you pass away. It's not quite, because a do not resuscitate only comes into force if they need to resuscitate you. But if you are dying, unfortunately, in a way that is extreme pain, it's not the same as a do not resuscitate. It's not always applicable.
Well, do get in touch with your thoughts on that story. It's a very difficult conversation, but it is becoming a national conversation now, isn't it? After Dame Esther Ranson spoke about joining Dignitas Clinic. Let us know what you think about that. gbviews@gbnews.com. But let's get the weather now with Annie.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Today's going to be another windy day. Not quite as windy as yesterday, but there'll be some quite persistent rain and showers across more northern and eastern areas. In the south and west, though, it should be a much drier and brighter day, and there is a chance of seeing some sunshine through the afternoon here. However, this band of rain will continue to stream into more northwestern areas, parts of southwestern Scotland, northwestern England, Northern Ireland as well. And the far northeast of Scotland will see some snow showers through the afternoon, as well as Shetland seeing snow to lower levels, so there is a snow and ice warning in force here. It will be a cold breeze across northeasterly areas, by contrast staying mild in the far southwest. That band of rain then pushes further east throughout the course of the night, and as it pushes into the colder air, it brings a risk of some snow to lower levels for northeastern Scotland, parts of Caithness, for example, and we'll see some quite persistent rain across many central and northwestern areas of Scotland. Staying dry, though, further south, another fairly mild night with the breeze still continuing. We could a further risk of snow continuing on Saturday morning for the far northeast of Scotland. Further south, though, it should stay dry once again, perhaps some early sunshine in the south and east. But by the afternoon, that rain does slowly start to sink southwards into more northern areas of England, North Wales, as well as a risk of some showers to parts of the southwest. But it should stay mild for the bulk of the country, but the far north staying in the colder air.
Annie, thank you very much indeed. 7:21, time for our great British giveaway now. And Tom Skinner is live for us this morning in East London. A very good morning, Tom. Tell us all about it.
Morning, how are you? You good?
Yes, very good. All the better for seeing you and a lot of food behind you.
You're feeling Christmassy?
We are. Are you feeling Christmassy?
I've just had a lovely Christmas dinner in the best cafe in East London, and it's raining outside. It's nice and warm in here. It's double busy. It's going to be a good day. But listen, we have got an absolute blinder. Where's Ernie? Ernie's a man, the best chef in the world. Ernie, what's the best thing on the menu today?
Christmas dinner. Gotta be.
got to, well, listen, if you're watching now, get yourself down Dino's Cafe, it's the governor. But also, what I'm here for, yeah, we've got a Christmas giveaway, the Great British Giveaway. Start the new year the right way. We're giving away £10,000 cash, an iPhone 15 Pro Max and £500 shopping vouchers. So get yourself involved. If you're not feeling Christmassy, that'll be the absolute best thing to start a new year with. But there are some terms and conditions. Bosh.
For another chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Oh dear, very entertaining there in that cafe in East London. Packed, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Having
Very
their
early in the
fry-out
morning.
this morning.
Well, it is breakfast time.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? Look, we're going to go on a break. Do stay with us, though, because coming up, we have royal commentator Angela Levin talking about Prince Andrew, who's going to be under scrutiny for his alleged links with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It's as new files are going to be released from a defamation case. This is GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here on GB News with Ellie and me.
And me. And Diamond. Now, the Duke of York is expected to be named among the 170 Epstein associates set to be revealed in unsealed documents that were filed as part of Ghislaine Maxwell's case. The decision by Judge Loretta Preska has been welcomed by Prince Andrew's accuser, Virginia Giuffre.
Now, she took to Twitter saying, "Merry early Christmas. Dozens of Jeffrey Epstein associates, victims likely to be publicly ID'd in court docs in coming weeks. Thank you and many blessings for Judge Preska, a truth seeker and justice maker."
Well, joining us now to discuss this further is journalist and royal biographer Angela Levin. Very good to see you this morning,
Thank
Angela. And tell us a bit more about this. So we're expecting this list of associates of Jeffrey Epstein to be released on New Year's Day, I believe.
Yes, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to enjoy this Christmas. It's coming out right at the beginning of January, and it's anyone who's had anything to do with him. And it'll be a huge revelation. Apparently some of the names are extremely well known and will shock us all. But we know that one of the names is, of course, Prince Andrew, and it's going to ruin his Christmas and maybe the whole royal family's. I mean, he paid out £12 million to Virginia Roberts, saying that he'd never met her and hoped that it would all go away. But we know it hasn't gone away at all. She's been determined to get more people to be accused when they have behaved so badly. So it's very, very difficult. And I think it's quite interesting that Prince Andrew has been trying lately, so I hear, to get back and to do something for the family, because there's also there's sort of people to do it, really. And King Charles has been very firm and said absolutely not. And I think he must be quite relieved about that. I don't suppose now that we would see him. He's been invited for lunch. He was invited last year at Sandringham for a Christmas lunch. But I don't think we'll see him go to church with everyone when they're outside and people could start shouting and all those things. I think he will keep very hidden, and quite right too. And it's quite interesting because if you look, that amount of money that he spent, absolutely saying he didn't know her and not saying he was guilty in any way. These things don't work necessarily. They bounce back again and again and again. And there's one woman who says that her name is Joanna Schoberg, and 22 years ago she sat on his lap. She admits that, and he started groping her breast.
This is Prince Andrew we're talking about?
This is Prince Andrew, yes. So he's in for perhaps another sort of direct
just because his name this is a list of associates, that's what it's being called, doesn't mean they're guilty of anything, does it?
No, it doesn't mean that anybody's guilty, but it means that you can then investigate whether they're guilty. There'll be a lot of people saying, well, perhaps this has happened to them, and it's been, you know, why were they friends? And that would be more investigations. So it'll go on and on and on and on, I think.
Have we heard anything from Prince Andrew about this allegation of groping, the one that you just described?
No, it's only just come out. I don't know. I mean, you might keep him quiet and he might want to say something, but he's, as we've seen when he was on Panorama years ago, that he's not very good at expressing himself and explaining, and I don't think he'll say anything. I think they'll say, you know, be quiet.
I think what is a terrible shame for the royal family is that it's going to be released on New Year's Day. That would normally be a day when we talk about the New Year's honours and we're celebrating the good in our society.
Yes.
This will overshadow it if we're not there.
Of course it will. This will be the... I'm not quite sure it will be actually on New Year's Day. It's supposed to be, but because that's a holiday in America, they might move it on a little bit, and I hope so, because it would be a shame to spoil. New Year Day is quite special, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're looking for the whole year, and you want it to be positive, because it's been so negative for a long time now, and we need something positive. But I'm not quite sure about that, but I think it might be put off for a few days.
And what do we know about Prince Andrew's relationship now with the royal family and Beatrice and Eugenie in particular?
Yes. Well, his children have always supported him. They've been very good. And Beatrice was the one who actually said to him, "You should not go on Panorama. This is not right." She's known as the most sensible person within that foursome. And he didn't take any notice with her, but she's not actually begrudged him. They do love each other all very much, but they
the whole
just
family
think
does, actually,
the whole
doesn't it?
family is very close, and I don't think that it's made much difference. And his ex-wife, the Duchess of York, has always been supportive of him. She's always said sometimes little ridiculous things like, you know, he's the most wonderful husband, he's the most wonderful father, he's absolutely the most wonderful man you can ever imagine. Well, it doesn't quite work like that when you hear stories about him, not just about Virginia Giuffre. And it's difficult for them, but they are very supportive. He's very lucky. And actually, it's Camilla who invited him and made sure he came last year for a meal. She doesn't bear grudges on anyone. And he did come, and he will be going again this year. And so there's a sort of support for him.
I tell you what, I'm looking forward to that documentary they've made that's going to be shown on Boxing Day.
It sounds absolutely amazing.
A year since the whole accession, actually, isn't it? And Princess Anne has been interviewed in it.
Yes, she never talks.
She actually said Camilla has been a wonderful support to Charles.
Yes.
And she says lovely things. She says that the Queen was very worried about dying in Balmoral because she was worried that that would really make things difficult for funeral plans.
Isn't that amazing?
And they
to
said,
think about that?
the family said to her, "Don't worry about things like that. You be where you want to be." And as it worked out, it was wonderful. So that documentary is going to be shown on Boxing Day.
I'm really looking forward to that.
It's 90 minutes, but I expect that we could have watched much more than that, because if they're opening up and talking, and astonishing that Princess Anne has actually agreed to say that. It's lovely. But I think that she also said that how difficult it would be to change from respecting the Queen to respecting her older brother, because sometimes she's quite bossy towards him. She said, but it came very quickly. And I think that's a wonderful sentence to hear, because they have been at each other's arms. And she didn't like Camilla originally.
But she does now?
She hugely does now, because it made him so happy that they have a lot in common, you know, horses, dogs, all that outside country life. And they're now very, very good friends, which is lovely, actually. It's really lovely. No grievances that you carry on and on and on.
No,
for
it's the sense of continuity I think we all learned from Queen Elizabeth as well. Angela, we've got to leave it there. I could talk about this forever, but
Me too.
It's so fascinating at Christmas. You know, we concentrate on our families, but we're also talking about the royal family still, which is lovely.
It is. Thank you so much, Angela. Now it's time to go through all the latest sports news with Paul Coit, who's here with us.
I could segue beautifully by going Princess Anne, the 1971 sports personality.
Yes, that's right, she was.
Yes. That's all I got.
Oh, right.
That's all I got. That's all I got for now.
But you're also going to tell us about the European Super League.
Yeah, I'm going to try and cut this down because it's so convoluted, because it involves court cases and it involves something that happened 3 years ago with clubs involved trying to start their own European Super League. There were 6 British clubs involved in that. Fans were outraged, didn't want any part of it. The clubs then pulled away. Nowadays, it's said that, you know, there was the actual leagues has banned clubs from getting involved. So anyway, it's left out of the 12. There was only 2 at the end, and that's Barcelona and Real Madrid that are left. But then there was a ruling in the European Court yesterday that said that anybody going against the new Super League is unlawful, because they should have freedom of trade. So they're going to try it again. So there's this new league that's being set up, but the interesting thing, it's nice having a league, but you need teams in the league. But at the moment, there's only 2. And whether it's actually going to go anywhere at the moment, I'd be very surprised. So I think we're going to hear about it, but whether it's going to happen.
The good news about Tom Lockyer, the Luton Town captain, who suffered that cardiac arrest.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge worry, wasn't it? Bought the Bournemouth game on Saturday, and it happened to him 7 months ago with his atrial fibrillation. So he has had a defibrillator fitted. And this happened the last couple of days, which is the same as Christian Eriksen had after he basically died on the pitch playing for Denmark. So he plays with that, and now it's expected Tom will. So Luton have said that now he's recovering, he's at home, but you worry, don't you? I mean, you think it's happened, the atrial fibrillation happened once. They say it's not the same as what happened with his heart on Saturday, but he's had this defibrillator fitted to his heart, but is he going to be going on to play? This is now a decision for him, for the club, for his family, for doctors, so it'll be a while, but we'll see whether he actually does come back and play, because there are players that actually do play with those.
And he's only 29 years old.
He'll want to go on playing, won't he?
Yeah,
of course he will.
I spoke to my old mate Nick Owen, of course, who's very much a Luton Town person, and he said they're all devastated.
I'm sure.
Devastated with what happened to him, but...
captain, incredibly popular
figure. It's the captain,
figure.
only 29, he'll want to go on playing.
Yeah, but everybody's going to worry. Everybody's going to worry. But I'm no doctor, but these defibrillators, they seem to work. And the whole thing is that if there's any problem, it will restart.
And they send out readings
as well. It does. Sends out readings constantly. And if there's any fluctuation in how the heart is, then it will rectify that. But, you know, I don't know about whether it's the right thing that he plays or whether it's the wrong thing, but we'll see. But that's something we'll look forward to in the future if he does.
Yeah, and we wish him better as well.
Absolutely,
Paul
100%.
Coit, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to be talking about the newspapers in just a few moments with our headline makers. And also, if we've just got time, we've got to show you some wonderful little hedgehogs. But more about that in a moment.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oh, you'll never guess what we've been talking about while you've been away.
Yeah. Probably best you don't know. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with me, Ellie Costello, and Anne Diamond. And you might be able to hear the giggles of senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and the former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall, our husband and wife duo.
Yeah, we've been falling out over what we think is a good Christmas movie.
Yes.
Tell us what your favourites are, Nigel.
OK, so on Christmas Day or over the Christmas period, you've got to watch The Great Escape and you've got to watch Zulu. I've watched reruns of that for years and years. I can probably do it word for word, but those are the Christmas ones.
No, you see, I'm fed up of seeing Zulu and just sitting down on the sofa, not moving. But no, Call the Midwife, The Holiday, as we were just talking about, the film, which is just awesome. And I like a little bit of sort of Home Alone and things like that, because that's just family entertainment.
We were talking about that this morning, weren't we?
I've never seen Home Alone.
Have you not?
I watched it last week.
Yeah, I need to watch that. That's on my list.
You have to.
Right, let's get on to what we're meant to be here to talk about.
Let's do some work.
Which are, some of the amazing stories in the papers, actually. And one of the ones that really got us going was Claire, in the Times, it's the smell of women's tears which reduces aggression in men.
Yeah, now I'm not convinced with this one, but apparently the chemicals in women's tears reduce down the aggression and the aggressive behaviour by 43.7%.
That's quite a lot.
It is. I mean, I'm not sure. Is it the tears? Because it's suggesting that when they collected the tears for this study, it was from a woman's face. So you also have the chemical ingredients in whichever face cream or makeup or something like that.
They got rid of that. They actually did this. It was Israeli researchers who were able to do it. So there were no other chemicals coming in. They just collected the tears.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the way
you sound convinced.
Well, I was sort of. When I actually read how they did the experiment, they did a computer game. So the guys then sat on a computer, and it was a game that said they'd had money stolen and they could take revenge by getting the money back. At the same time, they had sort of cotton wool pads with women's tears over their eyes, around their nose so they could smell it. And as a result, that's where it went down 47% of the men trying to get the money back. And that shows the less aggression. You don't believe me? I can see on all your faces.
No, it sort of makes sense, isn't it? Because if you do burst into tears, men tend to go a bit softer on you, don't they?
But I'm not sure if that's the smell of the tears or just the guilt factor that they have made a woman cry.
I just don't
and
think,
they're looking at someone. So
but this was not making a woman cry. That was the point. This was actually taking just the tears away from. So it wasn't the bloke actually making someone cry. They were working on the tears, and there's a control bit. They just used ordinary saline solution, which didn't work.
All right, well, we'll throw it open to you, please, at home. Do you reckon there's anything in that? gbviews@gbnews.com. Meanwhile, we're also talking about how good it is to have separate bedrooms from your other half.
Oh, God, I should leave that one over to you to start with.
No, is the answer.
Well, it says so in the Times, so it must be true.
Cameron Diaz says so, which I think is rather different. And she has a nice big Hollywood mansion where she can actually sort of spread out.
With wings, I'm sure.
But the idea is that you can sleep better, although the sleep is not as satisfying as being in the same bed as your partner. And in our house, given that all the bedrooms are used up, if we tried to go and do that, I don't know for the landing. So I don't think that would
You'd be on a couch downstairs.
Yeah.
Isn't it Cameron Diaz who was in The Holiday?
Yes, that was a very good link. Yes. Everything comes back around to Cameron. Claire, what do you make of this? Do you think we should be in separate bedrooms?
No, as a rule. I think if one partner is keeping the other one awake with very loud snoring or are unable to sleep, then I can see the benefit of it. But to be honest, I don't sleep very well if Nigel's not there.
Oh,
I really don't. I really don't.
I love you.
I mean, I'm not one for the emotion, but it's much better if he's there and I know he's there. And when he's away, it just doesn't feel quite the same.
You two are so cute. Can I just say, we were talking about that, women's tears and if it reduces arguments because men can't cope, really. And I said, do you two argue? And when Claire cries, do you make up with her, Nigel? And Nigel said, we never argue.
No.
You two are so sweet, very, very sweet. But Cameron here is saying she loves her husband dearly. She's married to, who is it, Joel Madden?
Yes.
Is that his name?
Yeah,
no, Benji Madden.
Benji
Sorry,
Madden.
I think that's his brother.
Yes.
They have a very happy marriage, but she says she just likes her own space.
I can understand that
brings
too.
joy.
Understand it.
I think a woman in every house, not that all houses are big enough, in every house a woman should have her own living room, her own little room, you know?
Like a den.
Well, yes, exactly.
Now, I don't disagree with that. I think a little den with clothes and a space for your makeup and a space for lovely
For
things,
your
or
little
even an
hobbies.
office.
Yeah.
Even an office.
I might be losing my library.
Exactly, exactly. But
I
it
think
would
that's
be
a
quite
great
nice
idea.
to have somewhere that is yours with all of your stuff that's left alone and no one's touched it, no one's made it messy. Would be absolutely superb.
Yeah.
But
And it also means if you do have an argument, you've got somewhere to retreat to.
you can decorate it in the way that you like. You can have the cushions that you like.
Yeah.
Things like that. I mean, I wish that we had a house big enough
Yeah,
to
we
be
all
able
need
to
bigger
do it.
houses. I'd like a dressing room. I think that would bring me joy.
I've got a dressing room. I cannot
Have
get
you?
in it now. Yeah.
So many
It's got- I
clothes.
know. And they're all over the floor because I tend to hang things on the floor. You know, I'll try that one on. Yeah, I end up with a
Nothing
pile,
wrong
so I
with
can't
it.
actually get in it at the moment. And my ambition is by Christmas to have tidied it up.
I want to be you. I want to.
Not long to go then.
I want to
No,
I
don't know when I'm
somewhere
going to
for
do that.
shoes.
I know, it would be nice, wouldn't it?
And I fall over the shoes all over the place, yeah.
I bet you have a good shoe collection.
I was gonna
I've got
say,
a
should we
wonderful
come
shoe
and help
collection,
you?
and I wear plimsolls all the time. So
I think we should come and help you with your shoe collection.
I'd love that. I want one of those declutterers. You know, there are people who will come and declutter your home.
I've seen that.
If there's one watching at the moment, get in touch.
It's not me. I was just
gbnews
offering
at
to take some shoes.
gbnews.com. Yeah. And Claire and I can always help you.
And have we got time for an moment?
Yeah, there's always time for an arm
Baby hedgehogs. Swimming hedgehogs. Wait for this. It's a very famous wildlife hospital, actually, and it had an unlikely helping hand when it came to weighing hedgehogs recently.
Yes, and that came in the form of the Transport Minister, Mark Harper, who went to Tiggy Winkles in Buckinghamshire for an announcement he hopes will save small mammals' lives whilst protecting drivers too. Our London reporter Lisa Hartle went along, and just a warning that this report does contain flashing images.
Do you want to look your hello hedgehog, me hedgehog sign?
Usually it's movement of people that the Transport Secretary is concerned with, but today it's about creatures like this hedgehog and the road signs that could protect them. Local authorities can now choose where to put this signage without going through government, something Mark Harper hopes will save time and the lives of small mammals.
I'm making it much easier for local authorities to use that sign in the future. So at the moment, if they want to use it in an area where there's a risk, either mammals from motorists or motorists from mammals, they have to go through a complicated procedure to use it. What I'm saying now, I'm pre-authorising the use of it. So in future, if local authorities think there's a need to use it, they can go ahead and do so. We don't have to come to my department for permission. And I hope that'll mean that we'll see more use of the sign in sensible places where local conditions determine.
Thousands of animals are treated each year at the Tiggy Winkles Hospital in Buckinghamshire for injuries sustained on the roads.
About 30% of our patients are road traffic accidents. We have probably 14,000 casualties a year. So that's quite a few thousand that come in through road traffic accidents, normally foxes, badgers, deer and hedgehogs. So I think for every sign that's out there in the right area, an impact position, if people just catch their eye, they'll be able to slow down and be aware that there could be something crossing the road. It could be a hedgehog, it could be a frog or a toad in the season. So it's a really big step and a really good thing.
Thanks to the incredible work of the staff here, animals are given the best treatment available.
You know, we give them injections of antibiotics, painkillers, we do hydrotherapy, we will even do surgery with putting a pin into a broken leg. All sorts our vets will do, yeah.
Just before we left, I had a very important question for the Transport Secretary.
And finally, how would you rate your hedgehog experience today?
10 out of 10. It was a great experience today. I was able to weigh a hedgehog, one almost at the weight it needs to be at before it's released into the wild, and the hedgehog was very interested in looking at the sign. Obviously recognised the picture. This is a great organisation here. They do fantastic work in getting animals back to health before they release them into the wild. So all power to their elbow. And anyone watching this, if you've got any money spare, feel free to donate it.
Lisa Hartle, GB News, Buckinghamshire.
Oh, I've so got to go there and help a hedgehog swim.
You do.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
sweet. Really, really lovely stuff. What should we chat about now? We've got a minute to go. Let's talk about Doctor Who, shall we? It's good for our elf.
Yeah, apparently. This is a weird one, really. If Doctor Who is shown over the Christmas period, fewer people will die the following year, according to research.
Now, how on earth do they reckon that?
Well, I don't know how they put this together. They've done the statistics, and it is purely statistical, so we don't know why this should happen. But this Christmas, we've got the new Doctor Who, Ncuti Gatwa, and he's on Christmas Day. So what we need to do is monitor everything from Christmas Day onwards.
How
and
on
see if we all survive better.
Well, we're going to be in great shape, according to that survey.
Exactly. I mean, we put a great advert for it.
Well,
maybe that's the reason.
Very good. What do you make of that, Claire?
Do we not think it's just because it's a Christmas special and
There's
everybody
always a
loves
Christmas
special and everybody's slightly happier? I don't think you can
But
put it
last
down.
year this happened to us, apparently, according to this research.
But it also, at the end of the piece of research, it said that we should all be thankful for doctors working on Christmas Day. So I'm not sure where we're going with that.
Well, it's Call the Midwife for you anyway, isn't it, Claire? Doctor Who.
And Zulu for him.
And Zulu
And I have to
for
sit
him.
through it.
Nigel and Claire, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back with lots more after a quick look at the weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Today's going to be another windy day. Not quite as windy as yesterday, but there'll be some quite persistent rain and showers across more northern and eastern areas. In the south and west, though, it should be a much drier and brighter day, and there is a chance of seeing some sunshine through the afternoon here. However, this band of rain will continue to stream into more northwestern areas, parts of southwestern Scotland, northwestern England, Northern Ireland as well. And the far northeast of Scotland will see some snow showers through the afternoon, as well as Shetland seeing snow to lower levels, so there is a snow and ice warning in force here. It will be a cold breeze across northeasterly areas, by contrast staying mild in the far southwest. That band of rain then pushes further east throughout the course of the night, and as it pushes into the colder air, it brings a risk of some snow to lower levels for northeastern Scotland, parts of Caithness, for example, and we'll see some quite persistent rain across many central and northwestern areas of Scotland. Staying dry, though, further south, another fairly mild night with the breeze still continuing. We could a further risk of snow continuing on Saturday morning for the far northeast of Scotland. Further south, though, it should stay dry once again, perhaps some early sunshine in the south and east. But by the afternoon, that rain does slowly start to sink southwards into more northern areas of England, North Wales, as well as a risk of some showers to parts of the southwest. But it should stay mild for the bulk of the country, but the far north staying in the colder air.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Inheritance tax.
Hello, good morning. It's just coming up to 8 o'clock on Friday, the 22nd of December, with Ellie and me, Anne. And these are today's top stories. The nightmare before Christmas is already happening. The UK is braced for the annual travel chaos, but it's set to be even worse in the aftermath of Storm Pier. Our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, is at Birmingham's New Street Station.
Yeah, of course, as Storm Pier continues to batter parts of the UK, millions across the country are going to be travelling on the road and the railway networks. I'll have the latest on the travel chaos from Birmingham.
And our national reporter, Theoj Comber, is in London at King's Cross St Pancras Station.
And this morning, hundreds of passengers are preparing to get onto the Eurostar following that unprecedented number of queues yesterday afternoon.
And the Czech Republic will hold a day of mourning after 14 people were killed and 25 injured in that mass shooting at the university in Prague. It's the worst fatal shooting since Czech independence 30 years ago, and it's not being treated as a terrorist incident.
The government has rowed back on their legal migration plan. The earnings threshold to bring foreign family members to the UK will now be £29,000 and not the £38,700 previously announced by the Home Office.
And the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has backed calls for a change in the law on assisted dying. The cause has been championed by Dame Esther Ranson, who's called for politicians to grapple with the issue for the first time since 2015, as she herself battles terminal lung cancer.
And Sir Keir Starmer has not ruled out launching nuclear weapons to protect the UK if he becomes Prime Minister. Speaking exclusively to GB News, the Labour leader said he was keen to increase defence spending.
We're clear that the first duty of government is the protection of the country, and so we're very, very clear about that in terms of the resource that must go with that commitment. But there is a NATO commitment here which we will always make sure that we maintain.
And are we getting another European Super League? Paul Coit knows.
Well, that's a very big question to ask me. Yeah, we'll see. It looks like it probably will happen in some form, but not actually the way it was going to happen. There won't be English teams involved, the way things are looking at the moment. We'll talk about darts. Luke Littler, who is the 16-year-old sensation at the World Darts Championship, and Manchester City will be playing in the Club World Championship today in the final against Fluminense. Fluminense.
We love that.
From Brazil.
And Annie is here with your weather.
Good morning. With just 3 days till Christmas, I'm sure you're interested in what the weather's doing. Well, you can find out all the details with me a little bit later on.
Well, we've had loads of emails in this morning, so do continue to join in the GB News breakfast conversation. Anything you want to talk about, do get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com. Good morning to Ollie, who says, good morning, Anne and Ellie. How lovely to have the Christmas bells on this morning. Happy Christmas to you and Merry Christmas to you, Ollie. And Dave, oh, yes, this was the request about the Union Jack bauble. I don't know if one of the cameras can just pan over to this tree over here by me. But Dave wasn't very happy with the Union Jack bauble, which was next to the white bauble on this tree. It's this bauble here, if you can see it.
Yeah, what was wrong with it?
Apparently the Union Jack wasn't showing. So you'll be glad to know, Dave, that in that last break, I stood up and I twizzled it around for you, so now you can see the Union Jack.
They are rather lovely, those baubles, aren't they?
Yeah, he says, I absolutely love those Union Jack baubles. They're glittery as well.
Tell you what, we were talking about the weather, the very bad weather if you're trying to land a plane. We've got video we'll show probably a bit later on. Oh, let's show it now. This video of an aeroplane trying to land at Birmingham Airport.
In Storm Pier.
In Storm Pier. I mean, honestly, you can't get over, A, how incredibly lucky that plane was to have such good pilots, because they made it in the end, but look at it. It looks as though it's hovering in mid-air, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes my tummy go funny just looking at it. You can't even imagine being on that plane. But Anne was saying, do get in touch if you've ever been on a flight like that. Eamon says, my mum was always a nervous flyer. Once on a packed flight from Dublin to Rome, the plane hit an air pocket, that sounds awful, in mid-flight and dropped about 50 feet. My mum started screaming, which then set off the other passengers screaming. We were in no danger. It was just turbulence, and I'm still laughing when I think about it.
Oh, I'm glad you're laughing.
I'd be with your mother on that one.
Yeah, Emma says, my husband and I have been on... We were on the very same plane from Dublin a few years ago in the biggest storm of 2015. It was hideous. Pilots tried to land. The wheels touched the tarmac, but then we had a go-around.
Ooh.
It was silent on the plane. And then after we'd gone up again, there was a PA that told us what was going on, and we then landed safely. I've been on one like that... There's a famous island somewhere in the... Oh, was it Hong... It might be Hong Kong. It's a very short runway with mountains either side. Yeah. And I was in the plane and it touched down and we thought we were there and then it took off again. Oh. And that is quite a fright.
And did they say why?
Well, they did later. They just said that they... I can't remember now.
It's when they don't communicate.
Well, and that's what I was saying earlier, though. You want your aircrew to be concentrating on the job, maybe even more than telling you what's going on. Amanda says, our friend has just retired as an airline captain. I asked him what they do to train for difficult landings. Apparently, every time they head towards a runway, it is considered to be a go-around. They then ask themselves, can I land this or go around? So they're always 100% ready for any last-minute events.
Well, thank goodness for that, especially in the kind of weather that we're seeing now with Storm Pier. It has caused absolute chaos, hasn't it? And it has been the nightmare before Christmas for lots of people trying to get away. They've been thrown into chaos with the arrival of Storm Pier.
Yes, and more delays are expected after all lines to and from London Euston were blocked earlier, whilst Eurostar and Eurotunnel services were cancelled by a last-minute walkout in France.
And today, already set to be the biggest day on the roads.
Well, we're joined by two of our reporters now who are at some of the trouble hotspots. Jack Carson at Birmingham's New Street Station and Thea Chicomba, who's at King's Cross, St Pancras. Who shall we go to first? Jack, how are things looking in Birmingham?
Yeah, well, so far, so good, Anne and Ellie, so far this morning. Lots of trains running on time. Of course, many of the trains coming into Euston, coming into Birmingham New Street, I should say, here at the moment, are those more commuter trains for people trying to get into work this morning. But for those longer journeys down to London, particularly on the West Coast main line, of course, the problems that we saw at London Euston Station yesterday with problems with the overhead wires caused by Storm Pier that caused cancellations across the board at London Euston, leaving many passengers stranded. That and whether trains can get in and out of London Euston will have a big impact here as to whether travelling from Birmingham New Street today goes particularly smoothly. We know around the country on the railway networks there has been some problems, particularly up in Scotland, who are still suffering in parts of Scotland from that yellow weather warning from the Met Office because of Storm Pier. But particularly here around Birmingham, it's the road networks and getting out of the city and the, of course, Spaghetti Junction, where the M6 comes around the city, that may well be causing some problems for those trying to get home on the roads today. We know particularly between 12 and 2 p.m. is when most people are expected to travel home today as they possibly finish work early for Christmas. And we're expected, the RAC say, 13.5 million leisure journeys today alone, particularly around Birmingham. It's parts of the M6 coming south down from Wigan and Manchester that there's going to be particular disruption. Of course, as you get further south, the likes of the M40, and always at this time of year, always seems daily as well, weekly, that parts of the M25 could well be congested at Junction 7 and also at Junction 16. But even further south than that, of course, the disruption from the industrial action, particularly on the Eurotunnel, is meaning this morning there are big delays already at Dover. There was queues of over 1.5 miles reported already before 5 a.m. and the Port of Dover asking people that only those with advanced bookings for both the drivers and passengers should be going into the Port of Dover to travel today. Of course, people make those last-minute journeys over Christmas.
Okay, Jack Carson, thank you for that really comprehensive overview there at Birmingham New Street Station. Let's cross over now to Theo Chicomba, our national reporter, who's outside King's Cross St Pancras Station. And how's it looking there this morning, Theo? Because we did see large delays and cancellations there yesterday on the Eurostar.
Yeah, that's right. So we had that unprecedented, or shall I say, out of the blue strike action, which was called yesterday afternoon. And that meant people who were trying to leave the UK from St Pancras heading into mainland Europe to France and other places were basically stranded here. And then those who were trying to get from France or other countries in mainland Europe to come into the UK were left just within a few minutes being told your train is no longer running. But this morning, though, many of those people who would have seen the scenes which took place yesterday afternoon into the evening thought to themselves, we should come here early. So what's actually happened here at St Pancras is that lots of people have come earlier than they should do. We've been overhearing in Tannoy saying people should be queuing up 1 hour before they're supposed to be on the train, but many people thinking, I don't want to miss my train, so they've come even earlier. So what that's meant, it's meant that more people have come here to the station, and the queues are going all the way around and just to the door to my left, which has train services which operate here in the UK. But as a result of that, people are having to wait a bit longer than they might have to. So it's going to be a long day for them. But in terms of the trains themselves, they are running on time. And there's a similar picture at Euston Station, which was mentioned by Jack just a few moments ago. But for now, though, so far so good for those passengers.
Well, fingers crossed people have smoother journeys than they did yesterday. Jack Carson in Birmingham for us, and Theo Chicomba at King's Cross St Pancras. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, it's 10 minutes past 8. The Czech Republic has declared Saturday a national day of mourning after a gunman killed 14 people and injured 25 at the university in Prague.
Yes, the Czech Interior Minister said there was no indication the killings had any connection with international terrorism, and police are still working to find a motive.
They're also working on the theory that the gunman might also have been responsible for the deaths of 2 people in a forest.
Well, this comes as a large number of weapons were found at the university building yesterday, where we understand that the gunman was himself a student. He also died, but it's not clear whether he shot himself or was shot dead by officers.
Well, joining us to maybe tell us further and shed some light on the subject, GB News reporter Charlie Peters. Hello, Charlie. I mean, I imagine police are really working very hard at trying to trace his movements and whether he was responsible for other deaths.
And further reports indicated last night that he might have killed his father in the hours before he travelled from the west of Prague into the city centre to start this attack. Prague this morning is unbearably silent, according to people on the ground there, saying that in the square around Charles University where the shooting place, lights are off apart from in the department where this mass slaughter took place, where police have been working through the night. And they are now looking to establish that motive, having very quickly ruled out any links to international terrorism or extremism. There are now suggestions from the president of the police that this shooter, David Kozak, could have been revolved around some sort of online Telegram channel, a social media platform where you publish your perspectives with certain levels of encryption. They said that he could have been inspired by a recent mass shooting in Russia and did report a certain fascination with killing. So they are investigating his links to a shooting last Friday in the east of Prague in a forest, as you said, where a father and a 2-month-old infant was killed. They had started that investigation. And then in the west, his father shot several hours before this attack took place in the town of Hostun, which is where he originates from. So this journey into the city centre, the police, it said, they were aware that the gunman was travelling into the town. However, they evacuated the wrong building. They evacuated the building where he was expecting to have a lecture. The gunman didn't travel there. They did not evacuate the entire university. So while it is very silent in Prague this morning, some murmurs about how this could have happened. Were adequate steps taken to ensure the safety of those students? 14 killed and over 24 injured, some of them very seriously, care obviously going on urgently overnight. And those questions still being asked because there was a warning. Police were aware that a gunman was travelling into the city centre.
Oh, my goodness.
In the Czech Republic, of course, the ownership of firearms is permitted in certain circumstances. And this 24-year-old student did have legal ownership of several firearms. But intelligence did suggest that this gunman was travelling in possibly to kill himself, not actually to turn the gun on his peers.
It's interesting because when the news first started to break, we did hear that he was going towards, or it happened in the philosophy building or something like that.
The arts
and then
building
later it was the Faculty of Arts. And that would explain that maybe they thought he was going to a different building.
They expected him at a 2 p.m. lecture, and this is the original room that they evacuated based on the intelligence that, of course, hasn't fully been released to the media yet. But it's clear now, of course, that that evacuation was insufficient and that the wider campus area was also part of this targeting. After a killing of a man in the west for a gunman to then travelling be in the centre of the city, questions are being asked this morning. Were adequate steps taken? Was that a sufficient police protection programme, or did more need to be done? Obviously, footage emerged very quickly after the incident yesterday of a man on a balcony with a long barrel rifle. We believe that was the shooter, David Kozak, of course, but also footage, remarkable footage, of students leaping from balconies, seeking shelter wherever they can. The police last night did say that they did the right thing, those students, because they barricaded themselves in those rooms very effectively. They took shelter in place instead of fleeing immediately, and those who couldn't take shelter were seen leaping from balconies onto areas now, as you can see on your screens. But for those listening at home, it is quite a drop. It's an ankle breaker. That's a serious ledge to leap from. People desperate to find safety however they could. Others, indeed, on your screens now, you can see people hiding actually off the edge of a balcony, several floors above the ground.
Yeah, they're only on a little ledge.
Just to find some cover from the shooter. Now, he is reportedly shooting at random last night. He did not target students on a particular manner. That's the report that was coming out of the Czech capital yesterday afternoon. Still trying to establish that motive, but as we said, the police indicating last night a certain fascination with killing, and they did refer to this Telegram channel, this social media platform he was running on his own Telegram uploads, where he had made links to this recent mass shooting in Russia, a potential inspiration for this event yesterday, this horrifying event in Prague.
And will there be a conversation then about this inspiration that he reportedly found online, that copycat attack, which we believe we may have seen in Prague yesterday based on a similar incident in Russia? How much weight, if any, does social media channels like Telegram, how much weight do they bear, responsibility do they bear on stopping these sorts of people being so inspired online?
These debates rage on regularly between the communication sphere and, of course, the security service, who engage very delicately with that world. Of course, there's so-called end-to-end encryption for many of these channels, which allows privacy for people like you and me to talk about our days and speak with our families. But of course, for people involved in organised crime gangs, international terrorism and narcotics, end-to-end encryption is useful in a rather different way. And so the promotion of these events, how they are shared online, is always a source of fascination and intrigue for the police and the security services. They will undoubtedly be looking into that. But also, there are questions about how did this young man come to acquire so many weapons? How did this man end up on the rooftop of a university building with a long barrel rifle with a serious scope, taking aim at his peers? Those are the more immediate questions that I'm hearing being asked out of Prague this morning. How did he get armed and how was he allowed to use it?
Yeah, and armed legally as well. Thank you very much, Charlie Peters.
And can you imagine if you're the family of anyone who died in that Faculty of Art building, knowing now what you just said, that they could have evacuated more of the university, perhaps?
Yeah, and so close to Christmas as well. Our hearts do really go out to those families and friends of those 14 that are dead and 10 who remain seriously injured in hospital.
OK, let's move on. 17 minutes past 8. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom right now.
And a new documentary reveals the royal family persuaded Queen Elizabeth II to spend her last days at Balmoral. The Princess Royal said she feared it would make things more difficult if she died at her Scottish home, but eventually her family convinced her to do so.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has backed calls for a change in the law on assisted dying. The cause, of course, has been championed by Dame Esther Rantzen, who has called for politicians to grapple with the issue for the first time since 2015, as she herself battles terminal lung cancer.
The Home Office has made a U-turn on its decision to hike the earnings threshold for a family visa to £38,700. Instead, it will increase to £29,000 in the spring. This is the visa which allows British citizens to bring foreign family members to the UK if they earn enough money.
OK, shall we catch up with the all-important weather at the moment? Here's Annie.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Today's going to be another windy day. Not quite as windy as yesterday, but there'll be some quite persistent rain and showers across more northern and eastern areas. In the south and west, though, it should be a much drier and brighter day, and there is a chance of seeing some sunshine through the afternoon here. However, this band of rain will continue to stream into more northwestern areas, parts of southwestern Scotland, northwestern England, Northern Ireland as well. And the far northeast of Scotland will see some snow showers through the afternoon, as well as Shetland seeing snow to lower levels, so there is a snow and ice warning in force here. It will be a cold breeze across northeasterly areas, by contrast staying mild in the far southwest. That band of rain then pushes further east throughout the course of the night, and as it pushes into the colder air, it brings a risk of some snow to lower levels for northeastern Scotland, parts of Caithness, for example, and we'll see some quite persistent rain across many central and northwestern areas of Scotland. Staying dry though further south, another fairly mild night with the breeze still continuing. We could a further risk of snow continuing on Saturday morning for the far northeast of Scotland. Further south, though, it should stay dry once again, perhaps some early sunshine in the south and east. But by the afternoon, that rain does slowly start to sink southwards into more northern areas of England, North Wales, as well as a risk of some showers to parts of the southwest. But it should stay mild for the bulk of the country, but the far north staying in the colder air.
Thanks, Annie. Now it's time for our Great British Giveaway now, and Tom Skinner is live for us this morning in East London. Good morning to you, Tom, and wow, you've got another Christmas dinner in front of you.
I've got a legendary Christmas dinner at the best cafe, Dino's Cafe, and we're in the Christmas spirit today. It's a lovely day. It's my last day of work for a shut up, and I can't wait. But first, everyone that's watching, we've only got a giveaway. We're going to put smiles on your faces. We're going to make you start the new year in style. You could win £10,000 cash, £500 worth of shopping vouchers, and a new iPhone 15 Pro Max, whatever that is. It's the absolute governor. I don't know. But you've got to get involved to win it. And listen, it will make next year different class. In fact, it's so good, we never look when we pour our gravy, because we're the absolute governors. Merry Christmas, everyone. Get yourself involved. Abash.
For another chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GB Wing to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/wing. Good luck.
Well, good luck indeed. Good luck. Do stick with us. Coming up, we're going to be debating should there be a ban on migrants bringing in their dependents to the country. You're watching Breakfast on GB News.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
morning again. It's 8:25. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Anne.
Now, the Home Office has U-turned on plans to hike the family visa salary threshold to £38,700.
Well, earlier this month, the Home Secretary James Cleverly told the Commons that the threshold for a family visa would rise from £18,600 to £38,700 next spring, with the aim of reducing the number of people coming into the UK.
But now it will increase to £29,000 instead in the spring.
Yeah, and this comes as the government has been warned that its ban on overseas care staff bringing dependents to the UK is catastrophic. Well, GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster has more. In fact, before we have more, can you explain what's going on? This is crazy, isn't it?
It's all a bit chaotic, isn't it? Basically, it was only on the beginning of December that the Home Office announced a package of measures to bring the levels of net migration from the current 750,000 people coming in legally a year down by 300,000. One of the measures that they announced was this change to the minimum income requirement. Basically, that's the amount of money that a household has to earn before somebody already living here can bring their partner or other family member into the UK. It was 18,500. The government were planning to double it to nearly 39,000 from the spring, with not much notice at all. There was huge outcry. There was probably going to be a legal challenge as well, saying this is going to mean that thousands of people, families will be separated, and this is just not right. Then yesterday, it rather chaotically emerged that the government had a bit of a rethink. So now they've sort of split the difference between the nearly 19,000 it was, the nearly 39,000 which it was going to be. They've said from the spring it's going to be 29,000, and it will go up, ultimately, they say, to 38,700.
But they're going to do it incrementally.
In stages. So that might seem very, very sensible. Of course, what it's done is it's managed to upset a lot of people, because it upset a lot of people initially when people were saying this is cruel, this is very unfair. And now they've rode back a bit. They've upset a whole different set of people who are saying, why are you going soft on this? So, and even within the Conservative Party, you've got people like Damien Green, who was former immigration minister, saying this is very sensible. People on the right of the party, like Jonathan Gullis, saying deeply disappointing and undermines our efforts. But I think worth noting that of this 300,000 that this whole package of measures is due to bring immigration down by, the original change was only predicted to bring down the numbers by 10,000. So in the grand scheme of things, this measure, which has upset a lot of people, is not actually a very big deal.
It's still quite a big jump, though, isn't it, Catherine? So was it £18,000 before? So
Yeah.
that was the threshold. Now up to 29,000.
Yeah.
I mean, some people would argue that still shuts out a lot of people, doesn't it?
It's very important low-paid jobs.
You know, for care working, exactly.
Yes, they
working
will.
for the NHS.
And there's another slightly separate row going on as well that you just touched on there, about healthcare visas for particularly care worker staff. We know there's a huge shortage of care workers, because you can pretty much earn more going working in your local supermarket than you can as a care worker. It's an incredibly difficult, demanding job that these people do, and the government are banning overseas care staff from bringing their dependents in. So groups are saying this is going to be catastrophic, that the care system could potentially collapse. We already know it's on its knees. So another row there. So this is the problem as well, isn't it? We've got huge levels of net migration, the exact opposite of what the Conservatives spent 13 years promising. But at the same time, we've got these critical shortages in industries like the care sector. And we need people to do those jobs.
And at the same time, we seem to have politicians at the top making decisions and then rowing back on them almost straight away. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Catherine, thanks very much. Joining us now is Executive Director of Migration Watch, Dr. Mike Jones. What do you think of all of this, Mike?
Well, it's chaotic, and it shows that the government hasn't really thought through its plans properly. I think the plan to reduce the number of dependents with, postgraduate students, social care workers, I think that's very sensible. But obviously with family visas, that will only make a difference at the margins. I mean, ultimately, you need a cap on student visas and work visas. The government promised a policy of attracting the best and the brightest, reducing numbers and reducing the number of low-skilled workers, but obviously they failed on that.
But there are critical shortages, as we were just discussing, in really important sectors such as the NHS and social care. So can we expect people from overseas to come and work in our social care sector or our National Health Service if they can't bring their families? Surely we couldn't expect people to come over here alone.
Well, the concept of a shortage in economics is quite problematic because, you know, immigrants don't just produce goods and services, they consume them as well. So if you import, you know, say 500,000 people to fill 500,000 vacancies, what happens? You create the same number of vacancies again. And this is what we saw during the New Labour years. It's what we saw during the early years of the Cameron government. You know, ultimately, if you want people to fill these roles, you need to raise wages to the market clearing wage to attract sufficient people to that position, and you need to improve work conditions. But the government doesn't want to do this.
Well, it doesn't seem to know what it wants at the moment, does it? We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's a debate that's going to go on and on, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. Right, let's get the sports news now, shall we? With Paul Coit, who's here with us. And we wanted to start with the wonderful Luke Littler.
Luke Littler. Do you enjoy the darts, by the way? Have you sat down and watched the darts?
No.
No.
I do like
You know, it's one of those things.
I used to. I was in. Do you remember Bullseye?
Absolutely.
I used to be in Bullseye.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, it was done in Birmingham, and I was working in the Birmingham studios at ATV at the time, so we were often asked onto Bullseye.
So you went on Bullseye? Did you do the 101 challenge with?
No, it was just a celebrity thing.
So what did you do? Do you answer the questions? Because that was my favourite show.
Oh, really?
It still runs.
I've got a magic picture of me, Nick,
Jim Bowen.
Jim Bowen, yeah.
And Bully.
And Bully, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was a very big deal. Oh, I mean, it was
huge.
a huge deal. Wasn't it on a Sunday afternoon or something? It was an enormous
And I've always looked up to you, but now I'm like, oh, my goodness, you actually went on Bullseye.
Yeah, and I had to go. I can't remember whether I...
And you said that so casually.
Well, yeah, well, but in ATV... I mean, lots of wonderful programmes were done out of the ATV studios.
But nothing like Bullseye.
Tiswas was.
Tiswas was as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's easy for you to say.
It was done out of the same studio I used to work in. And the minute I'd read the Friday afternoon news, the minute we said goodbye, in would come all the props guys, remove our set completely and start putting up the Tiswas set.
Oh.
So I used to, because obviously I had a pass and I was well known in the building, I used to go in on a Saturday morning and just watch from the wings.
Did you get hit by the Phantom Flam thing?
Well, yes, I wasn't allowed on, but I was. I used to. All of these amazing big rock stars used to come in.
Yes.
To stand in a cage and have phantom flanger.
Yes, of flings of custard.
Oh, it was
anyway,
fun.
that's enough of the sport.
Well, it is.
That's all you need to know.
But at the end of Bullseye, see, the thing I used to do this, I know a lot of people that used to play darts. I always used to do this with my dad, is that right at the very end, you'd have to try and get 101 in 6 darts or less. So you'd have, which maybe you did, and you have the person that answered the questions, they throw the first 3, and then the darts player would then go after that and see if you can get 101.
Yeah.
And I still do that even with my son, to do that and make him watch Bullseye. Sit and watch Bullseye.
Wonderful.
This is how TV used to be. But anyway, 16-year-old Luke Littler, who wasn't even born when Bullseye was long cancelled. So he's at the Darts World Championship at the moment, and he is doing so well. There he is. See, I think we agree, and that he looks older than 16, although Ellie thinks he looks about even younger.
Baby face, yeah, I want to say younger.
The baby-faced assassin. There he is, Luke the Nuke Littler. So he's already into the 3rd round now. It's from Runcorn in Cheshire. Started playing seriously at 9, Youth Open champion a couple of years ago. He's won the Welsh Open, the Isle of Man Classic, Gibraltar Open. So this is not totally unexpected.
Well, he's been playing it a long time, right?
He has. But to be 16, now this darts specialist, there he is. Look, there he is.
Tiny little chap.
I know. Look at this, his first Bullseye.
Very cute.
The look in his eyes there. I think he was looking straight at the bullseye as he was throwing the dart.
But how old is he there? You two have kids. You can tell me.
I would say he's about 5 there. Would you? 5 or 6?
I think,
do you think?
No, he's younger than that.
Is he in his pyjamas there? It's
He's
like
more
late night
3.
darts. Yeah, you think so? But
always had it, Paul. He's always had it.
And you've got to be careful with darts are pretty sharp there, but he's obviously very good. And this darts commentator is saying he's the best natural dart player some of them have ever seen. So he could well go on and win the Sid Waddell Trophy.
Well, he will, won't he? Already doing so well.
They split it, and then after Christmas, then he'll be going back. So I mentioned earlier he was 66-1, which is now dropped to 10-1. And my goodness me,
that's just
Anna's
one of the
thrown
times
me
I was on.
And we've got to get that on the air.
Let me see if I can make it bigger.
A picture of Anne
We've got a picture of
Diamond
Anne.
on
Here we
Bullseye.
go. Let me make it bigger. Hang on.
With Judith Hahn, Anne Aston
Stay
from The
tuned,
Golden
please.
Shot, and Kenneth Kendall, if I'm correct.
And that's just one of the times. That's another. Yeah, there you go.
My goodness me.
There, can you see that?
Look at that.
And Anne Diamond is here. There she is.
And Anne Aston, you're right. Judith Hahn and Kenneth Kendall used to read the news.
Great picture there, Anne. You did very well to pull that up.
Yeah, well, I just Googled. It's amazing what comes up on Google.
I'm going to spend the entire Christmas trying to search for that episode. Manchester City, I want to mention as well, because you know who they play tonight, don't you? Or this evening. Brazilian Fluminense. Now, Fluminense, well, I think we've got some footage of them. The Copa Libertadores champions, which is the South American version of the Champions League.
You're very good at these names.
This is them as they were celebrating getting to the final. I don't know whether Man City felt exactly the same way that they got to the final. So there we are. They're in the Club World Cup final that will play against Man City, 6 o'clock this evening. And we've even got... They play at the famous Maracanã. There we are. Look at that. This is back in 1984.
Wow.
This is celebrating winning the title there in Rio de Janeiro. This is just a friendly evening. But there we are. They'll be playing Man City tonight, 6 o'clock for the World Club Championship.
It'd be good to see similar scenes to that, wouldn't it?
Well, I hope not. But that was what happened actually when Anne won and 101 or less.
Exactly the same.
I have
way
no
everybody
idea whether I
reacted.
did, but no doubt you'll research that.
Yeah.
I will indeed.
Tell us next time. Thank
Happy
you,
Christmas.
Paul Coit. Yeah, Merry Christmas to you.
OK, we're running out of time. We've got to speed ahead because in a couple of moments we'll be meeting our headline makers and having a look at some of the interesting stories in the papers.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. You're watching Breakfast here on GB News with Ellie and Anne.
And we're also joined by GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and the former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall.
Right.
Very good morning to both of you. Where do you want to start, Anne?
Hey?
Where should we start?
Oh, OK. Shall we have a bit of Legendary Wizard here on GB News, singing I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day?
Yeah, we've got a good clip of this. Oh, it's a good song, isn't it, that one? Roy Wood performing I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day.
Well, I'll bet they do, because I presume they get royalties every time you go into a supermarket, and that's always one of the ones being played.
This is the great thing about a Christmas song, isn't it? If you make a good one, it comes around every year.
On and on and on. Well, I mean, this one was done before either you or Claire were born.
Really?
It goes back to 1973 that it was actually written. One of the saddest stories about that song is that that Roy Wood used a local school to actually provide the backing there, and when he got onto Top of the Pops, the equity rules meant the school couldn't actually go there. They had to have professional young acting students who didn't know the words to the song, which is a bit sad.
And who would have had to be paid as well.
Who would have had to be paid, yeah.
Oh, well, that's the music business for you.
It certainly is. Right, Claire, should we talk about a cat named Mog?
Now, I love Mog. I grew up on the Mog stories. My mum read them to me as a kid. She was a teacher. She read them to her kids, and then my son has grown up with them as well. So Judith Kerr was the most amazing author who came from some really quite humble backgrounds. Her parents were Jewish. She spent her formative years fleeing from Nazi persecution, so lived around Belgium and France, and Germany, and didn't really learn how to cook, didn't really have Christmas traditions as such. So when she had her own family, came to live in London, the family was centred around her 2 children and their 3 cats. And she used to watch how cats reacted to certain situations. And she loved to draw. She drew tigers and cats endlessly. And in this piece in the eye, which is exactly, I mean, it's just so beautiful.
Didn't she actually, she drew those as well? She
did,
drew Mog.
yeah, she did. And it was her absolute passion. And her son explains it as she would see the world through the cat's eyes, which probably goes to explain a little bit as to why children love it so much, because the cat will look at something in the human world and it doesn't make sense, and they're trying very hard to make sense of it, a little bit like children when they grow up and they're not quite sure of the rules. And it's just become the most beautiful Christmas tradition, and it's on Christmas Eve this year, Mog's Christmas. Everybody should watch it.
Well, it's on television.
On television, it's absolutely beautiful.
And of course, she also wrote The Tiger Who Came to Tea, which again is one of the most beautiful books, isn't it?
It is. I mean, they are absolutely fantastic books, and there's a really interesting part that in the the Mog and the Christmas Tree book, so Mog's Christmas, when the family go across and they walk past a cafe, there is actually the family from the tiger who came to tea are sitting in the cafe. So she always tried to link in those little bits from each story to make it special.
I mean, I know she wasn't poet laureate because she wasn't officially a poet, but she was something laureate, wasn't she? She was like an author laureate for children's,
for children's literature. Yeah, and she encouraged an entire generation of children into books because there were sort of some moral stories in there, but they were also just a little bit about how the world is confusing, and if you break it down, it can make sense. And don't worry, that sort of resilience as well that it built into it. It was something for a children's book which is so amazing to have, and they've lasted for generations.
When's it going to be on the telly?
It is Christmas Eve.
Oh, lovely.
And I don't know nothing about Mog, and I'll be watching on Christmas Eve to actually learn all about it.
Yes. Put it into a schedule.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next to The Great Escape.
And between
nice.
Zulu.
And Zulu, yes, of course. And now, Nigel, we can't get away from hedgehogs this morning.
We can't, no.
We're obsessed.
And we have some hedgehog news.
Yes.
Apparently, scientists have discovered 5 more species. We won't be able to find them in our back gardens because they're in Southeast Asia. And these hedgehogs are not prickly, they're furry, which presumably means they're a bit more cuddly than the ones that we're
watching at the moment. We're watching spiny ones.
That we see there. The only unfortunate thing is they've been given names that aren't quite so cuddly. So it's H. macaron and H. vivax, which seem a bit sort of aggressive names.
They need to do better with that.
Yeah, they do, yes.
It's very important. They're going to look like little guinea pigs or something if they're fluffy.
Yes, exactly.
They do, with long snouts.
You know, they say you're not meant to put out a saucer of milk for hedgehogs, don't they?
Yeah, they can't take the lactose in milk.
Lactose intolerant.
Lactose intolerant hedgehogs. But isn't it cat food and things like that?
Well, I don't know. I was just trying to make out what those little hedgehogs were eating there. It looked like mashed potato, but
I'm not sure. What are you meant to do with the hedgehog if you find a hedgehog? Are you meant to feed it?
You're meant to leave it.
No,
really.
you're meant to leave it.
Oh, so you did the right thing.
Yeah,
See, I'd be out
leave
there
them.
feeding.
No, you can't
Probably
do that, and that's
poisoning,
always the problem with wild animals.
But they do love it, because when I was a kid, we used to put out a saucer with milk and bread, and they always used to eat it.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because all the things that you shouldn't do, but they absolutely love it.
Yeah, like not feeding bread to birds, to ducks.
Yes,
I can't.
Yeah, especially bread, which is not very good for them, but they seem to stock up on it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Let's stick with the animal theme, shall we, Claire? About a school farm in Merseyside.
Yeah, no, I thought this was really interesting. So there's a school in Birkenhead who have their own farm because they wanted children to get to the feel of animals and to have a purpose, and also they noticed the uptick in their mental health by giving them something to be responsible for, and also learning about the countryside, learning about agriculture. And then they've actually taken their animals to the large county shows, sort of the Westmoreland show, which is incredibly large, and they've seen the benefits of it. And in fact, some of the students have gone on to be dairy farmers, to become vets. And
does this really surprise us?
It doesn't.
Our children have become so remote from nature.
From what goes on outside. I mean, the idea of having a school like this in an urban area where these kids, I mean, they'd never become dairy farmers or vets on the basis of if they'd just been stuck there on an ordinary school. But the idea of having a farm school there makes all the difference. I just think it's lovely, and more schools ought to do it.
But it's also learning where your food comes from. And I think that's really important. We lose sight of it, that kids now think that it all just comes from a supermarket when they don't see that from the land to the animal to the plate. They don't understand that process. And it's really important that you get back to those kind of things, and they might then encourage them to learn how to cook a little bit better, because I think that we've all seen that. We all need to be a little bit better at cooking these days for our own health.
There's so
and
much
also
to learn,
the
isn't there, from this kind of
There is, and
initiative.
it is a very, very simple thing that you can do. And just looking after animals, it does improve your mental health. You have animals around, it does give you another focus, another life to look after.
Oh, so Ellie's getting all sad because her adopted cat has disappeared again.
Yeah.
I reckon it's one of these cats that's got several homes and you've just been taken in.
I've been two-timed by Smittens. Well, I had him for about 5 or 6 nights, and then we let him out into the front garden. We haven't seen him in 2 days.
I bet he's just popped down to the road to another family.
They often do get to come back. During COVID, our cats came for a walk with us. It was a bit weird that we would go out for our sort of constitutional. Cats would come behind. And they would come out too. Oh, and the one cat who was originally feral and just turned up on our doorstep, been with us for years. But as we were walking along, we looked back, disappeared completely.
No.
We had no idea where he could have gone. And about a week later, popped back on our doorstep as if nothing had happened. So we assume he sort of saw somebody he'd actually been taking food from previously.
Well, my sister's got a cat which occasionally leaves her. And she's found out that he's got another home down the road. And they think they're his only home.
That's right.
So my sister thinks it's her cat. And
So maybe I'm the second home.
You may well
You may well be a third home or a fourth home, to
Do you
be
think
honest.
he'll come back?
Yes, I bet he will.
Yes, absolutely.
I think about him all the time. I'm
Oh,
obsessed with this cat.
You need a
Obsessed.
hedgehog.
I need a hedgehog. I need a pet, clearly.
I've been looking up what you should feed a hedgehog, right?
Yeah.
Hedgehogs can eat good quality proprietary hedgehog biscuits, dog biscuits and cat biscuits, which are best in that order, along with plenty of fresh drinking water offered in a shallow-sided dish or feeding station, which you can get specially for hedgehogs. You can also give them cooked, meaty dog and cat food.
Who knew you had all of these hedgehog
options?
Options.
Yes.
I love the fact that there are hedgehog biscuits.
Yes, I imagine you have to go online somewhere
specialist deal
and
of that
find
kind of thing.
Yeah, good quality hedgehog biscuits.
well, absolutely,
wouldn't you
the
like
best.
to know? And should we end with this remarkable story of Alex Batty? I mean, if you haven't seen these images this morning, it's the front page of the Sun newspaper. Alex Batty, this is the 11-year-old boy that went missing in France. Can you see that now? Yes. Went missing in France 6 years ago. He's now, I believe, 17 years old.
Yeah.
And he has come home from being with his mother and grandfather in Spain. Nigel, it's the most remarkable story, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And what I like about this is that obviously during that period that he was away in the sort of hippie commune, he's really grown up. So he wants to come back because he wants to do study computer science. He wants to mix with other children of his own age. And the great thing he says about his mother is, I love my mum, but she's a good person, but she isn't a good mother. And he's decided his future has got to be back in Britain with his grandmother.
What struck me about this interview was, you used the word earlier, it's so mature. He
It's the maturity
is such
yeah,
a brave
that's right.
young man to escape the life that he's known for the last 6 years, to leave his mother. That's a really difficult decision to make, but he knows he wants a different life.
He does, and it's quite interesting that he wanted friends of his own age. It's something we all sort of slightly take for granted, and the only person that he ever found of his own age to talk to was a young Spanish lady, a Spanish girl in a cafe. That was his only sort of friend for a while.
And he
then, of
wants an
course, the family
education,
moved
doesn't
on.
he? He tried to
does.
enrol in school in France and was rejected because he didn't have any ID. But he's come here and he wants to be trained in something to do with computer science.
He's very good at computer science.
Apparently brilliant at it, yeah.
Very good, and it's something he's taught himself, and he's borrowed books from other people to learn how to do it. It's quite interesting that he wants to get ID because his mother was very sort of anti-state, anti-government, and didn't want him to become a slave to the system, which is why he didn't have any ID. So it's proven quite difficult for him to have a footprint in the kind of life that he really wishes to have. But I think because this is his choice, I think it's absolutely right that every effort is made.
Let's show that.
And he's obviously so determined. He's going to go.
Yeah.
He's going to go a long way, isn't he?
It's a Sun exclusive, but they've got a picture of him with his nan. And you can only imagine what a lovely Christmas they're going to have together at last. Look how chuffed she looks to be with him.
It's lovely, isn't it? The only thing I do worry about is when he hasn't had the education for the last few years. But he sounds as though he's...
And I worry about too much publicity as well.
Yeah, but that'll die down, won't it?
I hope so.
He'll start to live a normal life now, all being well.
Yeah.
OK, well, look, thank you so much for being with us and bringing us some lovely stories today. Thank you very much.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah, and
Merry Christmas.
I just want to tell you, you can get...
And Merry Christmas.
You can get hedgehog biscuits on Amazon. I've just had a look.
It's very important that you know that, so thank you very much, Anne. Let's have a look at your weather. Also very important to know.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Today's going to be another windy day. Not quite as windy as yesterday, but there'll be some quite persistent rain and showers across more northern and eastern areas. In the south and west, though, it should be a much drier and brighter day, and there is a chance of seeing some sunshine through the afternoon here. However, this band of rain will continue to stream into more northwestern areas, parts of southwestern Scotland, northwestern England, Northern Ireland as well. And the far northeast of Scotland will see see some snow showers through the afternoon, as well as Shetland seeing snow to lower levels. So there is a snow and ice warning in force here. It will be a cold breeze across northeasterly areas, by contrast staying mild in the far southwest. That band of rain then pushes further east throughout the course of the night, and as it pushes into the colder air, it brings a risk of some snow to lower levels for northeastern Scotland, parts of Caithness, for example, and we'll see some quite persistent rain across many central and northwestern areas of Scotland. Staying dry though further south, and another fairly mild night with the breeze still continuing. We could a further risk of snow continuing on Saturday morning for the far northeast of Scotland. Further south though, it should stay dry once again, perhaps some early sunshine in the south and east, but by the afternoon that rain does slowly start to sink southwards into more northern areas of England, North Wales, as well as a risk of some showers to parts of the southwest, but it should stay mild for the bulk of the country.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Put your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's exactly 9 o'clock on the 22nd of December. It's me, Anne, and Ellie here on Breakfast at GB News.
We start with the nightmare before Christmas. The UK is braced for the annual travel chaos, but it's set to be even worse this year in the aftermath of Storm Pia. Our national reporter Theo Chicomba is in London at St Pancras International.
We'll have the latest from St Pancras, where there are delays now following yesterday's industrial action. Those using the Eurotunnel and Eurostar. We'll have the latest shortly.
And our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson is at Birmingham's New Street station.
Yeah, and as Storm Pier continues to have impacts across the UK, both on the road and railway networks, 13.5 million journeys are set to take place today as people head home for Christmas. I'll have the latest from Birmingham.
Thanks, Jack and Theo. The Czech Republic will hold a day of mourning after 14 people were killed and 25 were injured in a mass shooting at a university in Prague. It's the worst fatal shooting since Czech independence 30 years ago, and it's not being treated as a terrorist incident.
And the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has backed calls for a change in the law on assisted dying. The cause has been championed by Dame Esther Ranson, who has called for politicians to grapple with the issue for the first time since 2015. And that's, of course, as she battles terminal lung cancer.
Sir Keir Starmer has not ruled out launching nuclear weapons to protect the UK if he becomes Prime Minister. Speaking exclusively to GB News, the Labour leader said he was keen to increase defence spending.
We're clear that the first duty of government is the protection of the country, and so we're very, very clear about that in terms of the resource that must go with that commitment. But there is a NATO commitment here which we will always make sure that we maintain.
And Annie Shuttleworth, of course, is here with your weather.
Good morning. With just 3 days till Christmas, I'm sure you're interested in what the weather's doing. Well, you can find out all the details with me a little bit later on.
Thanks, Annie, and you can join in the GB News breakfast conversation. You're very welcome to do so. GBViews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GB News.
As Ellie will tell you, I've been pestered all morning through the programme by somebody trying to ring me, and I keep having to shut down and say, "Don't, whoever it is, I'm on air."
Keep slapping your Apple Watch, don't you?
Yeah, it's the only way you can shut it down. And unfortunately, I've just found out that it's a company trying to deliver vital presents to me.
Yes.
At 8 o'clock in the morning.
Very important ones.
And now I've missed it 3 times. They said we've tried 3 times to deliver, and now they tried, and they've probably gone back to a depot. And they said, ring the depot to arrange redelivery.
This is going to be
betting I won't get them before Christmas now.
Yeah, well, it's going to be your Christmas mission now.
Yeah, it really will be. I'll be onto it in a few minutes.
Straight away after we come off air this morning. But of course, we are talking about the nightmare before Christmas for so many, because festive getaways have been thrown into chaos with the arrival of Storm Pier.
Yeah, more delays are expected after all lines to and from London Euston were blocked earlier.
And there's exceptionally heavy traffic at Dover as fallout from yesterday's Eurostar strike continues.
So we're joined by 2 of our reporters now to give you the very latest. Jack Carson, who's at Birmingham's New Street station, and Theo Giacomba, who's at St Pancras International. Let's start with you, Jack. How are things looking in Birmingham?
So far, so good this morning, and I must admit, of course, as we're now hitting a bit more rush hour, things certainly are getting busier, but lots of people already walking in with their suitcases ready to catch their train home, hoping they can get their train home and miss, of course, the big rush on the railways. Now, of course, yesterday, the impacts of Storm Pier across the country did cause a lot of delays and cancellations across the network, particularly for trains here on the West Coast Main Line. Tried to get down to London Euston because of the storm and problems with the overhead wires near Euston Station. There was cancellations across the board and people couldn't get in and out of that station in London. So that did cause some big problems here at Birmingham New Street. But so far today, those services are running smoothly and people should be able to get home on those services. But it's not just, of course, on the railways, it's on the roads as well, particularly around 12 till 2 p.m. today. We believe are going to be some of the busiest times on the roads today, and the RAC urging people to travel either before 11 o'clock or after 6 p.m. to try and miss the rush, because in some places, particularly around the M25 at Junction 7 and Junction 16, you might well see delays of up to or even over an hour, and particularly here around Birmingham, of course, when the M6 comes down and carries on continuing around Spaghetti Junction, the M6 coming south from Wigan on that stretch to Birmingham could also be seeing a lot of delays as well. So that congestion could really be causing some problems. But down at Dover, of course, we had that industrial action yesterday on both the Eurostar and the Eurotunnel. Down at Dover, of course, around the Euro tunnel on the ferries as well. We knew before 5 o'clock this morning there were big delays of queues of well over a mile long. So the Port of Dover urging people that only those with advanced bookings to turn up on the day if they're trying to make it across the border for Christmas.
Jack Carson in Birmingham, thank you very much indeed. Let's cross over now to Theo Chicomba, who's at St Pancras International for us this morning. And Theo, how is it looking there? Because yesterday, huge delays and huge levels of disruption.
Yes, well, at the moment, queues are moving as they should, but the issue is that many people have come anticipating there's going to be lots of people, and as a result, the queues are going around St Pancras Station. In terms of the trains themselves, they are running, and unlike yesterday evening, they weren't selling tickets to passengers as they weren't sure at the time to see how services would operate, but they are now reselling tickets to those who wish to travel. But it's not ideal for anyone who's trying to get away for Christmas this year, those looking to leave the UK to go into mainland Europe, and for those trying to leave mainland Europe to come into the UK as well. But away from the trains here at Heathrow Airport, it's anticipated that there's going to be a huge amount of traffic there in terms of busyness. They're saying it's going to be busier than it was before since COVID times started. So that's another thing to look out for. So passengers are advised to check before their travel and to just give themselves an hour or so before they get there, instead of getting there several hours earlier, which may mean many more people are stuck in the same place waiting.
Theo Chicomba there for us at St Pancras International.
And Jack, thank you very much both. That's our sort of Christmas chaos roundup for the moment. I hope you get to wherever you want to go today.
Yeah, best of luck.
Now, at 9:07, the top story, of course, is the Czech Republic has declared Saturday, tomorrow, a national day of mourning after a gunman killed 14 people and injured 25 at that university in Prague.
Well, the Czech Interior Minister said there was no indication the killings had any connection with international terrorism, and police are still working to find a motive.
And they're also working on the theory that the gunman might also have been responsible for the deaths of 2 people earlier in a forest.
Well, this comes as a large number of weapons were found at the university building, where we understand the gunman was himself a student. He also died, but it's not clear whether he was shot himself or whether he was shot dead by officers.
Well, our reporter Charlie Peters is with us now. What more do we know yet?
We're developing more understanding of the motive behind this attack. Excuse me. And it appears that the shooter was inspired in part by a mass slaughter that took place in Russia earlier this month. Now, reports from the police last night and this morning say they got an indication of an upcoming attack because of his Telegram account, an online messaging platform where you can post without reply updates on your life and what you're up to. And he sent a warning at 2 p.m. that he was intending to go to the university to conduct a shooting or kill himself. And that is what has occurred soon after. So there are concerns this morning that the police did not act sufficiently yesterday afternoon when those reports filtered through. He also shared on his Telegram account earlier that this killing on December the 7th in Russia, carried out by a Russian teenage schoolgirl, was an inspiration to him, that she showed him the way. He said that before her attack, he didn't believe that mass shootings were the way. He said that he would prefer to become a serial killer. But her attack, said, she showed him that they could be more, quote, profitable. This was the language that he used in that Telegram message, which the police were aware of before the attack yesterday afternoon. He also went on to say that he sat, he waited, he dreamed, and that without the event, he would have become a lunatic. Well, of course, many people saying that you quite clearly already were in that state. The police said he had a fascination with killing, and having written out any links between international terrorism or extremism, it is looking this morning as though his motives revolve around an interest in death and that he just wanted to kill. And that is clearly exactly what he did.
And we've got more detail, haven't we, Charlie, of the hours, the days that preluded this attack, where 14 people have been left dead, 10 seriously injured, and he may have been responsible for the death of 2 others in a forest.
That's right. And so it's not just the 14 killed yesterday, but in fact 2 on Friday in a forest east of Prague, reportedly a father and his infant daughter. He's now being linked to that attack, and we understand that the Czech police will be conducting forensic analysis between the cartridges used at that killing and those from yesterday, but also that he killed his father before carrying out this attack yesterday in the west of Prague, in a town called Hostun, before driving into the town. And as I said in the last hour, those questions being asked of the police, that they evacuated the building where he was due to have a lecture, but they did not evacuate the wider campus, even though he had posted in Russian on his Telegram channel that he was coming into the city centre to conduct either a shooting or a suicide, and then carried out that attack. The police knew he was coming. They knew he was moving into the area, but many asking, was an adequate level of evacuation carried out yesterday? Were sufficient police deployed to the area? He actually went to a different square, and as we understand this morning, with further information coming to light, fired from a balcony into the square and towards a bridge near where people ran across. It's understood at this time that tourists could be among the casualties and those injured. Yesterday, of course, Prague in Central Europe, it's a very popular Christmas destination, not just for Czechs, but those around Central and Eastern Europe.
Markets.
People will take the train into Prague from around the area, you know, from neighbouring countries, to visit the iconic city at this time of year. And as you can see on your screens now, people fleeing away from the scene of the attack, the square further away from the one that was evacuated when the reports came through via his Telegram channel, people hiding on ledges around the university building, the arts department, and also leaping from ledges onto ground level below, often jumping several feet to escape the mass shooting as it was taking place. We also saw footage of people sheltering in place within the classrooms and the lecture halls where he was carrying out this killing.
Jumping there, they're jumping 20 foot.
There's serious heights that they're jumping from. It shows the level of desperation that was clearly going on. But for those people jumping, we can only presume that they had no other choice, that they would have heard bullets coming closer, even as the gunman was firing off the balcony. And the only way they wanted to escape that floor was from leaping off the balcony onto the level below.
Oh, I can't even imagine the panic, can you? Charlie Peters, thank you very much for giving us that update.
12 minutes past 9. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom today.
And the missing teen, Alex Batty, has revealed why he left his mum and granddad after 6 years of travelling around Europe with them. The now 17-year-old said he was fed up with their hippie lifestyle, and that although he loves his mother, Melanie, he admits she's just not a great mum.
The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has backed calls for a change in the law on assisted dying. The cause has been championed by Dame Esther Ranson, who has called for politicians to grapple with the issue for the first time since 2015 as she battles terminal lung cancer.
The Home Office has made a U-turn on its decision to hike the earnings threshold for a family visa to £38,700. Instead, it will increase to £29,000 in the spring. This is the visa which allows British citizens to bring foreign family members to the UK, but only if they earn enough money.
And Fast and Furious star Vin Diesel's former assistant is suing the US actor, accusing him of sexual assault during the 2010 filming of Fast 5. A lawyer for the actor said his client denies this claim entirely. Thank you for getting in touch with your views, as ever. Ellie, you were worried about the cat that you'd sort of adopted that now seems to have disappeared again.
Yeah.
Well, there's a good tip from Suzanne. Morning, Suzanne.
Morning.
We were told by a dog trust that lost cats and dogs often find their way home if a used, i.e. unwashed, bedsheet is hung out in the garden. Their sense of smell is so extraordinary. I mentioned this to a friend and she passed the info on to her daughter in Australia. She hung a pillowcase out and her cat returned that night after 6 weeks of being lost. I hope this information helps anyone with a lost pet.
Well, maybe that's what's happened to Smittens. The cat that I rescued appears to have disappeared again, so I think he's probably gone back home to his rightful owners. But if he wants to come visit me anytime, he's more than welcome.
Well, hang a pillowcase or did he sleep on a street or something.
Yeah, I did find him in my bed at one point.
Yeah, well, then you hang it out in the garden or on the terrace or something.
Might be very tempted by that. And Anne, you've got some advice about your wardrobe. Anne has a very busy wardrobe, don't you? And lots of shoes. Phil says, Anne, how about you sell your clothes through eBay with an as worn by Diamond message?
Yeah.
They'll sell like hotcakes.
I think that would put people off. I really do.
No.
I've tried that, but selling anything like that takes organisation. Yeah. For a start, you have to take pictures, and you have to light it well, and then you have to be organised enough to
post it all out.
Yeah. Oh, honestly,
need a PA.
I don't know.
Anne,
that would be nice. That would be very nice. More advice for you a bit later on what to feed hedgehogs. Right now, shall we catch up with the weather?
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Today's going to be another windy day. Not quite as windy as yesterday, but there'll be some quite persistent rain and showers across more northern and eastern areas. In the south and west, though, it should be a much drier and brighter day, and there is a chance of seeing some sunshine through the afternoon here. However, this band of rain will continue to stream into more northwestern areas, parts of southwestern Scotland, northwestern England, Northern Ireland as well. And the far northeast of Scotland will see some snow showers through the afternoon, as well as Shetland seeing snow to lower levels, so there is a snow and ice warning in force here. It will be a cold breeze across northeasterly areas, by contrast staying mild in the far southwest. That band of rain then pushes further east throughout the course of the night, and as it pushes into the colder air, it brings a risk of some snow to lower levels for northeastern Scotland, parts of Caithness, for example, and we'll see some quite persistent rain across many central and northwestern areas of Scotland. Staying dry, though, further south, another fairly mild night with the breeze still continuing. A further risk of snow continuing on Saturday morning for the far northeast of Scotland. Further south, though, it should stay dry once again, perhaps some early sunshine in the south and east. But by the afternoon, that rain does slowly start to sink southwards into more northern areas of England, North Wales, as well as a risk of some showers to parts of the southwest. But it should stay mild for the bulk of the country, but the far north staying in the colder air.
Annie, thanks very much indeed. Now it's time for our great British giveaway. Tom Skinner is live for us this morning in East London. Morning, Tom. Hello there. Have you eaten your breakfast now?
How are you? Well, listen, I've had my breakfast and I'm still in Dino's Cafe. It's been a lovely morning and happy Friday, you lovely, lovely people. And of course, it's the last Friday before Christmas and we've got the great British giveaway. We're giving away £10,000 cash, £500 in shopping vouchers and a brand new iPhone 15 Max Pro. But let's ask a couple of Dino's Cafe regulars what they would do if they won 10 grand. Simon over here, what would you do with your 10 grand?
I'd buy a nice new car and do some refurbishment on my house.
Fantastic. See, that's what you can do with the money. Let's see what Ernie would do. Ernie, what would you do with the money, mate?
Well, it's my Ruby anniversary next year, so I'll take the wife away on a beautiful luxury holiday in Italy, overlooking the Adriatic. Beautiful.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. Jeff, I'm sure you'll spend it wisely. What are you going to do with it, mate?
I will take my family on a lovely holiday to Antigua and have a great time with my wife and my sons. Thank you.
Brilliant, mate.
Thank you very much.
Well, listen, so there's so much you can do with 10 grand. Do you know what I'd do? I'd buy a load of breakfasts down here and I'd probably go on holiday or something. But if you want to get involved and win 10 grand cash, a brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max and £500 worth of shopping vouchers, get yourself involved. And I want to wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas. Bosh!
For another chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GB Win to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? £10,000 in time for Christmas.
I'd do a holiday.
Yeah,
it may not be in time for Christmas, I gather.
January.
But it doesn't matter. January is the...
I believe it's coming.
I've been looking at these absolutely amazing hotels. And where do you go for the shortest possible aeroplane ride for the best possible weather at the moment? It's probably the Canaries.
Yeah, Canaries.
Or somewhere a bit further south, like Malta or Madeira.
Yeah, Madeira.
But there are these fabulous, I mean, stupid expensive hotels in the Canaries, so I'm having...
But £10,000 would do you very nicely.
Yes, it would.
That would get you a few
nights.
It
would get you, yeah.
Right, she's already got them up here. She's doing a research already. We'll come back with lots more after this short break.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Now, the late Queen's thoughts in her final days are expected to be revealed as part of a BBC film called Charles III, The Coronation Year, which will air on Boxing Day.
Yeah, Princess Anne actually gave an interview and she shared the difficulty her late mother felt dying at Balmoral and her being convinced to step back from the decision-making process.
Yes, the Princess Royal also vocalised that she weirdly felt a sense of relief when the imperial state crown was removed from the late Queen's coffin, marking the ascension of King Charles.
Well, Cameron's here to tell us all about it. Have you seen a sneak preview yet?
I have seen the entire documentary, Anne. I've been very, very lucky. It's the most amazing documentary, giving you a real insight into the behind the scenes of the royal family in the year leading up to the coronation. But it does start very sadly, reflecting on the late Queen's death at Balmoral, and Princess Anne gives this interview where she is talking about the fact that the Queen was really concerned for others in her final days and her duty, thinking that it would almost be an inconvenience that she died at Balmoral because, of course, her coffin would have to be transported back to London. But there was always plans in place for the Queen to die at Balmoral. It's thought that that's where she would personally wanted to have died. It was called Operation Unicorn, and I think from looking back it went without a hitch, didn't it?
In fact, we all thought it was rather wonderful that Scotland was so included.
Yes, and Princess Anne was saying in the documentary that we were trying to persuade her that, you know, it's for the best, but you're here, and it was right in the end that you died in a place that, you know, she felt most at home and most relaxed. But, of course, there's so much more in the documentary. I'm not sure how much time we've got, but there's lots of behind-the-scenes of inside Balmoral Castle, which we've never seen before, with Rishi Sunak spending time with the King, his first weekend away for a summer at Balmoral as Prime Minister. We've got behind-the-scenes of the room just where the balcony is of Buckingham Palace before they go out onto the balcony wearing the 2 crowns as well. We get behind-the-scenes of a secret location in London where the crowns are being resized to fit the King and Queen Camilla's head as well. Philip Tracy's workshop, the famous royal hat maker, I didn't know this, but he actually does the velvet inside the crown to make it the right size. So, yeah, all very exciting. Boxing Day.
Really good.
Yeah.
What time on Boxing Day do we know?
6:50 on BBC One.
It'll be wonderful.
I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Me too.
That's it from us, but we will be back tomorrow at 6, yes. Well, I will be anyway. I don't know about you.
No, I'm not sure.
Up next is Britain's Newsroom, however, with Tom and Dawn.
It certainly is, thank you. And my goodness, it's actually a pretty busy news day. I wouldn't think that there's so much news this close to Christmas.
There's a lot of good news and some interesting news and lots of showbiz sparkle coming up as well.
There is indeed.
Not just my outfit, by the way.
No, we'll be speaking to East 17 about their new Christmas single and also exploring that new government U-turn.
And a lunch crunch, find out exactly what that means.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9:30 on Friday the 22nd of December. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Tom Harwood, and Dawn Neeson.
Yes, actually, and the nightmare before Christmas. Today is set to be the busiest ever day of the festive season at major UK airports and on the roads. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson is at New Street Station for us.
Yeah, of course, as Storm Pia continues to batter parts of the UK, millions are travelling on the railways and 13.5 million people are expected to travel on the roads. I'll have the latest on the Christmas travel chaos.
Well, not many days left now until Christmas. We'll have the latest from St Pancras, where there have been delays since this morning following the strike action yesterday.
And terror in Prague. 15 people are dead after a mass shooting at a Prague university yesterday. Our reporter Charlie Peters has more.
Government's visa U-turn. The Home Office rows back on their legal migration plan and reduces the threshold to bring foreign family members to the UK. Let us know all your thoughts on all our talking points today. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, here's the news with the lovely Polly Middlehurst.
How kind, Dawn. Thank you very much indeed. And good morning to you. Well, as people start that great Christmas getaway, those travel problems persist with busy roads and cancelled trains compounded by strike action and high winds caused by Storm Pia. The RAC has estimated 13.5 million car journeys will take place over the festive weekend. And there are delays at the port of Dover, where there's been industrial action with queues of over a mile long for drivers trying to cross the border for Christmas. Meanwhile, at London's main railway terminuses, trains are running, but services are disrupted. Best to check before you travel. And there are delays as well at Heathrow, where more than 250,000 people are expected to thread through those terminals. Eurostar services have resumed this morning, we can tell you, after thousands were stranded in London last night after an unexpected strike by site workers. That led to widespread disruption on Eurostar services, particularly from London St Pancras and Eurotunnel, which runs vehicle-carrying trains from Folkestone. Trade union representatives reached an agreement last night after they initially rejected an end-of-year bonus. Well, away from news about the travel, a woman has been charged with murdering her 4-year-old son in East London. 41-year-old Keziah Makaria will appear in court later over the death of her son, Kobe Dooley Makaria. The 4-year-old, who suffered knife injuries in Hackney yesterday, was taken to hospital but died there. A post-mortem examination will take place next week. And the Czech Republic is to hold a day of mourning after 14 were killed and 25 more injured in a mass shooting in Prague yesterday. Police are saying a 24-year-old Czech student opened fire at the Charles University. The gunman also reportedly shot dead his father and, it's thought, took his own life. Police, who are still trying to establish a motive, say they're working on the theory that he was also responsible for the deaths of 2 people in a nearby forest. Students have been paying tribute to the victims at the university as well today. And here at home, the UK economy has taken its first step towards recession after performing much worse than was expected. Figures from the Office for National Statistics found there'd been a downturn in GDP. Rather than flatlining, the economy contracted very slightly by 0.1% in the 3 months from July to September. Economists had been expecting growth of 0.2%. Those are your latest news headlines. More on all those stories by heading to our website, gbnews.com.
The Home Office has U-turned on plans to increase the salary threshold for Britons wishing to bring a family member to the UK, this following a backlash.
Earlier this month, the Home Secretary James Cleverly announced the threshold for a family visa would raise to $38,700, but now it will increase to $29,000 in the spring instead.
Well, the former Conservative Member of Parliament, Neil Parish, joins us in the studio to discuss this. And Neil, this is a bit sneaky from the government, isn't it? Sneaking out this big policy change just a couple of days before Christmas.
Well, I think they got cold feet, didn't they? Because while you want to limit migration, you also want to keep the health service topped up with staff. And so, therefore, I think they saw that this would have such a huge impact on people wanting to come and take up jobs in this country. It was 2012, the last time it was put up from to 18,600. So I actually think taking it up to 29,000 is probably fair. Until we actually train enough of our own employees to be able to do the work that we are bringing people in to do, then we will not solve the migrant problem. And I think, you've got to be careful too with people like the armed forces and others who meet and fall in love, and then they can't bring their girlfriends and wives or husbands back with them. I think this is a real problem. So it's one of these things that gets a great headline, let's stop the migration, but right from the days of David Cameron when we're going to reduce it to tens of thousands, and then Boris is now writing that it should be put up to 40,000. Well, Boris actually reduced the rules and allowed more people in. And so when they come out of office, they suddenly very wise at what to do. And I think we've got to be realistic, train up our own people to do the jobs. Migration will drop, but unless we need growth in the economy, and so therefore, we're seeing interest rates probably be able to come down now. I think we will see growth. We will actually need workers, and we haven't got enough of our own workers, whether we like it or not.
But Neil, they only increased this at the beginning of the month, didn't they? Up from 18,000, which was the level, with the net migration figures of 745,000, which are frankly, cause that knee-jerk panic.